All right, let's see. It says we're live. My chat's refreshing here. Hey, look at that. And we're back. Let's see what's going on over here.
We also carry the Cortex Stone product. Looks like tile, looks like stone, but it's
Twitch
Cortex
TV.
with the softness, quietness, and the easy installation to go with it. We also have Cortex wood.
We're live.
Wood, real wood, but with a more stable core for Southwest.
Look at that. I'll be damned.
If you haven't been to the Floormeisters, you really owe it to yourself to visit the store.
All right. Looks to me like we're pretty good again.
All right. Go online, floormeisters.com. That's floormeisters.com.
Listen to the Dan Patrick Show at work. Never boring, that's for sure. Streaming 24/7 at foxsportsfm.com. We are Fox Sports. We go. Now back to Miller and Moulton. No. This is Miller and Moulton.
You're live.
Minutes before 7 o'clock. Thanks for making us part of your day. Miller and Moulton, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio, streaming at millerandmoulton.com, broadcasting live on Miller and Moulton's YouTube and Twitch.tv channels. Just type in Miller and Moulton. No symbols. Make sure you can spell my last name correctly, and there you go. Sign up. It's free. Hot steaming deal. Heck, if you've got Amazon Prime, you get a Twitch channel. All right, make us your favorite. Make us your number one channel.
Been doing a lot of Amazon Prime lately. Discovered, well, they've got a lot of music documentaries that I did not know about. I watched the Dwayne Allman one 2 days ago that was spectacular. And then I got into, and it's Terry Roth, I believe his last name is. He was the original guitarist for Chicago. Watching that last night. Really good stuff. You know me. You give me those music documentaries, I'm pretty much locked in. I've sequestered my daughter to half the house now. I give her the first part of the morning. I give her until noon where I'm a good parent. And then at noon I said, enough. Enough. Do your own thing. I need to watch a show or two.
Well, hold on. I mean, you're working till 9. So you're saying you give her the run of the house for 3 hours? That's it?
No. I between 9 and noon, it's full dad-daughter time. We do everything together. Then at noon, I say, you're on your own.
Here's your PB&J, by the way. I'm back in charge.
Yeah, I mean, go to the other room, watch Netflix. It's okay. Play Candy Crush on your tablet. Whatever.
So this is this part of your Golden Apple nomination process?
It's done.
Here?
I already received it.
Okay.
And they already made the mandate. We're going back to school in the fall. I'm retired.
Right. Yeah. So they say. We'll see. I mean,
it was an executive order, David.
I understand that. They give those things out all the time, though. I mean, they rescind those suckers, on a dime. But yes, for today, make your plans accordingly. All right, good deal. We'll tap you on the shoulder if we're going to change our mind. All right, it's good to know. 27 minutes before the top of the hour. Time now for...
Five big stories that you need to know. This is Miller and Moulton Starting Five. Fox Sports Radio and foxsportsfm.com.
Well, it was thrown out there as a trial balloon a week ago, and now it's expected to happen later today, that the Ivy League will announce that they are moving all their fall sports, and that means football, to the spring. Now, it'll be interesting to see if they announce that they're just going to play conference games in the spring. Because, I mean, if you think about it, you have to have your non-conference opponents that are also moving their games to the spring in order to be able to have non-conference games. So I would expect the Ivy League to announce that they're going to play each other and do so in February and March, or March and April. Remember, a lot of the Ivy League located in the Northeast, weather's usually not pretty good in February. So we'll see.
But February, I mean, David, did they give a date? I'm sorry. You keep saying February, but they keep saying spring. And I'm not trying to be a smartass. February's not the spring.
No, I know. My guess is practice in February and play in March and April.
Okay, and I'm not trying to be smart and go after you, but you brought this up when the Ivy League brought it up last week, and in order to me at least to have a relevant discussion, I'd like someone to give me a date or two that they're planning on doing this.
But these colleges end so early. I mean, in theory, you got to be done before graduation.
You don't. As you mentioned yesterday, baseball and softball aren't. I'm just pointing out that other sports operate that way. So you don't, in theory.
But my guess is that you will want to also. That you will want to. Why drag the football? You're already inconveniencing your football players. Why have them play after, quote unquote, graduation? But announcement expected later today. I brought this up a couple of weeks ago, in which there were some people who college basketball is their thing, in which they have been saying to the NCAA, maybe we should move the season up. Well, Dan Gavitt has talked to a few people at the NCAA, and there is an idea, and it's almost a proposal, to move the college basketball season up 2 weeks. Instead of opening day of the college basketball season being the second Tuesday of November, which would be November 10th this year. That's when FGCU is scheduled to host USC. They're talking about moving it up to October 27th. And obviously give themselves a couple more weeks of buffer if in case they have to stop the season at any point in time. To me, Mark, because you're not moving March Madness up. I mean, it's CBS and Turner are not moving March Madness up. That ain't happening. So to me, you're doing this because you're expecting at some point to have your season halted. So we're going to give ourselves an extra 2 weeks buffer to get all our games in.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me, David. Interesting in that we have the Ivy League delaying their season by months, and we have another sport trying to move their season up. I mean, these are in direct opposite of one another.
Right. In football, they're thinking about moving it to the spring, fall to the spring. Meanwhile, in basketball, there's an idea to move winter up more into the fall.
Right. Just making sure I got all that correctly.
Right. Talking about expected later today, it will be announced that the Ryder Cup is not going to happen in late September in Wisconsin this year. It will happen in late September in Wisconsin in 2021. That means that they'll push the President's Cup back to 2022. And it also means that the European Ryder Cup, the next one, will be in Rome in 2023. So the Ryder Cup will go back to odd numbered years. It got moved to even number years after the attacks on September 11th. Speaking of which, Major League Baseball, which just announced its schedule for this year, is expected real soon to release their schedule for 2021. And this would be real early compared to when they normally do it. And they've already announced that on September 11th in 2021, which will be obviously the 20th anniversary of that fateful day, that the Yankees and Mets will play each other. Other baseball news, Clayton Kershaw has been announced as the opening day starter for the Dodgers. It'll be his 9th opening day start. And Red Sox starting pitcher Eduardo Rodriguez has tested positive for the coronavirus. The Red Sox counting heavily on him after trading David Price and Chris Sale being out for the year with major surgery. Deshaun Jackson. Anybody check out his social media posts yesterday? This just in, the Eagles wide receiver doesn't like Jews. All right. And
used a particular person to quote.
Right.
That never seems to work out well.
No.
You know, Hitler.
Right. So, and former NBA player Steven Jackson then took to Twitter and backed him up on it.
Yes, he did.
And there was also a little bit of outrage yesterday in which a few people were like, hey, fellow NFL players, any outrage over what Deshaun Jackson said? You guys haven't had a problem expressing outrage about other things in the last 5-6 weeks. The Eagles, needless to say, were horrified. And if you, by chance, have not read Deshaun Jackson's comments, if you stumble across them, you too would be horrified by them. The question becomes, what are the Eagles going to do? Mark, I have not heard this discussed yesterday, and I have not seen it in print. And I understand that things change. And listen, we all can be hypocrites. We all could think and say one thing one day, and then when the situation is very similar, but you just change the dates and the names, and you all of a sudden are going to act in a different way, and somebody points it out to you and goes, well, what are you doing? That's not how you felt before. But don't you think the Eagles as an organization have a problem here?
Yes.
Because they, I'm sure, would love to cut Deshaun Jackson.
Yes, they would.
But didn't they have another wide
Yes,
receiver
they did.
5 or 6 years ago?
Yes, Mr. Cooper. Riley Cooper. Who
right, the N-word.
Over and over again.
Yes.
I mean, it was a barrage of N-bombs.
Correct. And they did not get rid of him.
No.
No. Mm-mm. So now, Chip Kelly was in charge then. Different people are in charge now. You could come out and say, hey, quite frankly, we made a mistake back then. We should have just cut him. I'm horrified by these comments, and I'm not going to stand by them. We did it once. It was a mistake. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice.
But if you recall, in the Riley Cooper situation, they implored we want to teach. We want to make this a teachable moment. Well, if you're going to play that with the white guy dropping the N-bomb,
right,
and you cut the black guy for taking on the Jew, it's a pretty bad look.
Yes. I believe it's called being a hypocrite. Now, I'm going to look up the definition after the show, but I believe it would fit that criteria.
I think you're right.
So the Eagles right now are leaning towards keeping Deshaun Jackson, but suspending him. Be curious to see if the NFL takes any action here. The Raj can chime in and do whatever he wants to anybody, on the basis of a whim. So
be interesting to see if a lot of the owners say something, because they've been talking so much since Roger Goodell made his Black Lives Matter comment.
Right.
I will say here, if an owner gets up and say anything, they open themselves up to a lot of criticism right now. It's a very dicey situation for the NFL. It really is.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Kraft, you can't say anything. Well, why not? Well, because you haven't said anything in the last 6 weeks. All right.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Snyder hasn't left his boat in 2 months, for crying out loud.
Right. I mean, when he finds out about this next month, he's going to be appalled. Speaking of the NFL, first off, you're not going to believe this. Even though the two sides worked out a 10-year labor extension, so that we have 11 years of labor peace, they can't agree on what they're going to do in the preseason. The players don't want any preseason. And the owners are still like, no, we want to play 2 games. I mean, we've cut it in half, but guys, we need to play some preseason football. So they're arguing over that, number one. And number two, did you see what came out last night? That the NFL, and I don't know if they can do this unilaterally without the players' approval or not. This is very much what we just went through with the MLB and the MLBPA, in which we didn't know, could the owners unilaterally decide what the season's going to be, et cetera, and we found out they could. The owners are talking about deferring 35% of the players' salaries this year because of the loss of revenue, or expected loss of revenue because of the coronavirus. And we're talking, they guesstimate they're going to lose about 1/3 of their revenue because of no fans at the games, or very few fans at the games. And we're talking $4 to $5 billion is what they're guesstimating they're going to lose. And so the owners are like, well, then we want to be able to take your money. We're not going to do what Major League Baseball did, where you're going to get the money. We just want to not give it to you now. We want to put it in the bank. It'll earn some interest. We'll give it to you over the next 3 years.
Think Bobby Bonilla, not as much money. Think of it as a good investment.
Yeah, and the players are like, no, no, we're getting paid now. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. The WNBA has a couple of concerns. One, apparently they have housing issues in Bradenton that they're having to work out. And number two, they have a co-owner, Senator Kelly Loeffler. And she's a U.S. senator, not a state senator, from Georgia. She's co-owner of the Atlanta Dream. Well, the WNBA has announced, like the NBA, they're going to put Black Lives Matter on their court. Well, she's appalled by it. And she doesn't believe that the movement is a positive one, thinks that they're a radical group and that they're anti-Semitic and a few other things. And she has voiced this to the league. And her feeling is that we should not put that on the court, and we should put an American flag on every uniform. We should be promoting unity that way. And there are those in the WNBA who believe that she should no longer have a part of one of their franchises. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Will Kelly Loeffler become the Donald Sterling, Mark, of the WNBA? A Division III conference, Mark, that's located in Pennsylvania and Maryland. They have 11 schools, does the Centennial Conference in those two states. They have suspended fall sports for this year. Now, no talk as to whether they're going to move it to the spring. But what I find interesting is the Ivy League, located in the Northeast, going to move fall sports to the spring. A conference that's located in Pennsylvania and Maryland going to not play fall sports this year. And that's the part of the country that we think right now is doing damn near the best in terms of fighting the coronavirus. So I find that interesting. The Brooklyn Nets have another player that's going to miss the NBA restart because of the coronavirus. So not only do they not have KD and Kyrie, they're down 4 other players, Mark, who have opted out of the restart. I mean, there was talk for a short time yesterday. Should the Brooklyn Nets not take part in the restart and essentially forfeit what is all likelihood is a playoff spot and just go, sorry, we just can't do it? Now, they're not going to, but that's how much they have been affected by this. And one other college basketball note, backup Florida point guard Trey Mann took his name out of the NBA draft and announced he will return for his sophomore year. That's because the starting point guard transferred. And so Mann thinks, hey, I'm going to get to play this year. So good news for the Gators. And that, Mark, at 13 minutes before the hour is
the starting 5. 5 big stories that you need to know. This is Miller and Moulton starting 5. Fox Sports Radio and FoxSportsFM.com.
And our buddy Ruffin McNeil moved a little closer to home.
Yes, he did.
He and Miss Earlene are now going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina at NC State.
He must do something right. He ends up being unemployed for about 6 seconds every time he's unemployed.
Yeah, everybody loves him. Everybody loves him. Even Lincoln Riley said, hey, I know you want to be closer to home, closer to family. It's going to suck losing you, but you're a good man. Do whatever you want. And meanwhile, and your son, who's at East Carolina, he returns to the state of North Carolina. It's not at ECU.
No, and hey, you know, and not because I pay a lot of money to that place. David, they're, to me, one of the ripest schools of the non-Power 5 that should be better. North Carolina's full of athletes right now. Full of athletes. And they're a grease fire. And Dooley's got to get his act together and turn it around on the basketball side, too. He had a grease fire that he inherited, but by this year, it's got to be closer to 500.
Yeah, he likes his team. I will say that. I talked to him about a week ago. But yes, he's entering year 3, and ECU football's been a grease fire since they got rid of Ruffin McNeil, and they shouldn't be, because as you said, it's not like there's not talent in that state. 12 minutes before the top of the hour, Miller and Moulton, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio.
Welcome to the program.
This is the Dan Patrick Show.
Talked a little bit about the McGuire-Sosa documentary, and I think if this was last year at this time, we'd probably go, oh, that was pretty good. But right now, after the Jordan documentary, and the Lance Armstrong documentary,
all right,
it sort of fell flat because you're going...
David, I have it worded this way. 10 years ago, LeBron James made the decision and took his talents to South Beach, and at that moment, the players took the power in free agency. Is the league better now because of it?
Yes or no?
That's, yeah.
Western bacon cheeseburger with charbroiled beef, crispy bacon and onion rings, and topped with tangy barbecue sauce. But we added spicy jalapenos and melty pepper jack cheese. We took a burger that was already delicious and spiced it up. Why are we using this whip crack to explain it? Because jalapenos sound like this. Try the new spicy Western bacon cheeseburger at Hardee's. Feed your happy. Limited time only at participating Hardee's restaurants. Price and participation may vary. Hardee's presents the Southwest omelet biscuit.
So, I can have you want to have a little fun here at our expense.
Did you post that question?
I just posted it. Yes.
Gotcha.
I don't know if you caught yesterday that Len Jennings answered our poll question.
Oh, I did not.
And, well, good. Then we're doing this coming back. Short segment. This will be fun. Because I will ask you the question that one of the people who liked the tweet of Len Jennings was the mayor of Kansas City. Leading me to the question, David, other than me being fired or dying, what would it take for a mayor to like one of my tweets? Well, that guy at Costco didn't even last a day.
No.
Rumor has it he's now a bagger at Oaks Farms.
But hello, is this on?
Oh, I hope it's on. This is what you're going to start getting. If you want me to do 2.5 minutes during the commercial, I can't do sports nonstop. But Len's on that list, David. Len may have been on our original list.
Well, of course he is.
I mean, I actually think you put him on the list. The lady at Wendy's.
Right.
I think Len might have been on our original.
Yes, I do too. I think those were 2 of the 5.
My wife, your wife, the lady at Wendy's.
Not my wife. Not anymore. Let me tell you.
At that time, she was.
Yes, at that time. Now she's Ruth from Ozark. My goodness. And I love her for it. I told her the other night, I go, you've never been more attractive to me. I had to put up with this whole minister's daughter thing for 25 years. I will say, David, it took you. Ozark act is really appealing.
It took you a lot longer to get your wife to make that turn. And while my wife doesn't swear typically, and you don't get a lot of cursing out of my wife, I have really brought out the sarcastic blankety blank in her in the last couple of years.
Well, it is a gift that you have, Mark. It is. Okay.
Smell your own, huh, David?
Hey, I like the fact that you help, pull it out of her. And then I come off the top rope. So I like it. But, yeah, my wife is Ruth from Ozark right now. He is just cursing up a storm. She'll say something, which is very much Ruth from Ozark, and I'll say, can you add a southern twang to that?
Now back to Miller and Moulton.
All right, now we're getting somewhere.
This is Miller and Moulton.
Your life.
Miller and Moulton, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio, streaming at millerandmoulton.com, broadcasting live on the Miller and Moulton YouTube and Twitch.tv channels. You can chime into the show via the Williamson Brothers Marine and Roofing text and talk line 479-5551, 479-5551. It's poll question time. Our question yesterday was who was the winner in the Chiefs Patrick Mahomes contractual situation, and 58% of you said both. Both.
And there were a few comments that were left. People have other answers every once in a while. And Len Jennings, our friend.
Right.
Former Fox 4 sports guy, then ABC 7 news anchor.
Yep.
And then Kansas City news anchor, now Kansas City sports anchor.
Right.
I think I've got that right.
You do.
Also placed by David Moulton some time ago on the 5 nicest people in the world list.
He is.
Long time ago, I had something my wife did, and David just simply said, well, she's one of the 5 nicest people I know, which led to someone on the text line saying, okay, who are the other 4?
Right.
And David racked his brain for a whole show, and at that time, his wife made the list. We just discussed during the commercial break. We don't know if either of our wives are on the list anymore, and it is the fault of both husbands that they have been removed from the list.
Well, and 2020. I mean, let's say my wife's turned into Ruth from Ozark, for those of you that watch that show, and it's because of the events of 2020. But there was a lady that worked at Wendy's
in the drive-thru.
Nicest person. Len Jennings, our 2 wives. That was 4 of the 5. The 5th was always a rotating. It changed.
Right. And I brought this, revisited this because Len simply said, and he gave a great answer to who won. He said all of Kansas City, and that's absolutely true. But it was liked by 3 people. I was one of those people. Yost Malone is the Twitter handle of someone who says he's a black business owner, a baseball lover, and an insurance agent. And the other one was Mayor Q. Quentin Lucas, the mayor of Kansas City, liked that tweet, which led me to this question, David. What would I have to tweet to get a mayor to like it? And I thought of 2 things. 1, I was no longer working. 2, I was dead.
Oh, come on now. I mean, nobody's going to like the you dying tweet.
You sure?
Okay. But
1 minute.
But I mean,
I have no idea what we could do to
get
a mayor in this town to like one of our tweets.
I mean, I almost blanked myself at the other place when former Sheriff Mike Scott was in the building and said, hey, Mark, how you doing? And I was like, wow, he knows who I am? Is that good or bad?
Well, he's looked you up a few times on the computer, so that's how he knew who you were. But, so
he'd have found me.
Right. Our poll question today, 10 years ago, King James made the decision, and at that moment, the players took the power in free agency. Is the league better off because of it, yes or no?
I don't think it's close.
Well, it's funny. Upon further review, I think the decision was great for the league. LeBron going to Miami, I thought, was great for the league. The players taking control of free agency, I actually don't think is good for the league.
Miller and Moulton, we'll discuss it on the other side. Thanks for listening. Fox Sports Radio. Johnny Mac, that is a great question. Is David still eating English muffins and peanut butter, or did he graduate to something else?
Still eating English muffins and peanut butter. Yep.
So we went to Tacos and Tequila Sunday for a little dinner and had queso because, let's be honest, you can put queso on a shoe and the shoe would taste great. But there was a little queso left over. Made myself a little egg white omelet yesterday. Put the queso inside the omelet. Holy cow. It's a game changer right there, kids.
Is that how we're going to market queso from now on? Queso. It's a game changer.
It is the game changer. It is one of the more versatile things on earth. You put essentially a Philly cheesesteak it's queso. I mean, it's just a cheese mix. I mean, it's better with a cheese sauce than just a piece of provolone, if you know what I mean. I mean, ask the folks at Wally's Deli. That is one fine cheesesteak there. Much better than Crux. And this little joint, the Eatery by Ryan in South Fort Myers, makes a nice cheesesteak. And like I said, maybe the cutest set of waitresses of any non-Hooters Twin Peaks I've been to down here.
Gotcha. I wonder if Hooters is going to survive this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
See, the problem is that their food's not that good.
Their food sucks.
I mean, I hate their wings. Some people love their wings.
Their wings are awful. I don't like bread. I call them Ethiopian chicken wings. There's no chicken on them. That's why they have to put bread. You get those wings naked, there's nothing to them. I do want at some point for our Twitch audience, I need to start ranking. Like, I think we could do a poll question this summer of best chain pizza, best local pizza. Because you've got, like, Rosati's, I think, is the decent pie, and it's a chain. Grimaldi's might be the best chain pizza, period. I don't know if you can touch that. And I don't know who else you'd put in there. Mellow Mushroom was good in Atlanta. It sucks in Estero. Sucks. I was so disappointed. Their pizzas were so good in Atlanta. When I lived there when I was in my 20s, Mellow Mushroom was really good pizza. And I don't know what happened to the chain because it's not good. I don't know about the one by you, but by me it was lousy.
Went to it once, found it expensive and mediocre.
That's about, I think that hits the nail on the head, David.
So, but then again, when it comes to pizza, I'm not much of a food snob, but when I want good pizza, it's got to be good. Otherwise, I'm just going to go. If I just want pizza, I'll go get the $6 stuff. To be honest, with you, just shove it in.
And that's where Mellow Mushroom is. Like, if you're going to charge me $18 for a pizza, be good.
Right.
There's no difference between that and a Domino's pie to me. Where's Palumbo's?
Now, the best local sports show this town has ever heard. Here's Miller and Moulton.
You're live.
As we approach a couple minutes past 7 o'clock, top of the morning to you. How the heck are you? We are Miller and Moulton. This is Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio. We're streaming at millerandmoulton.com. We're broadcasting live on the Miller and Moulton YouTube and twitch.tv channels, which will get even more interactive. We have been urged by the folks at Twitch to do even more during the commercial breaks. So we have to make sure that both of us don't get up and get water in the same break. One of us needs to stay in our chair and entertain the masses.
Yeah, we got into, I'm trying to have a poll question about pizza down the road. I'm trying to put together a list of whether it's best chain, best local. So that was the commercial break. David and I discussing pizza.
Local will be hard. Okay, because there'll probably be, more than 3-4 choices.
Well, we might have to do a Cape. You might have to break it down: a Cape Coral, a Fort Myers, and Naples, and then have the grand prize winner. We've got time, David.
I have to admit, Mark, it sounds like that could be a bracket. Now, I don't know, not a 64 team bracket, but that sounds like, certainly a Sweet 16 bracket, but maybe even a round of 32 bracket.
No, you're on to something.
And I just remember, we got sports starting up here. First off, Mark, the MLS is back. Starts today.
Ooh, that's right. Miami and Orlando. Orlando, the underdog. Want to say it was plus 170? Something like that?
The fact that you know that is very disturbing. All right. But MLS is back beginning today. And in a couple of weeks, 2 weeks from tomorrow, Major League Baseball back at it. And then a week after that, NBA, and a few days after that, the NHL. So, Mark, we only have really a couple of weeks now to start doing those type of poll questions. We're going to have games. That's right, Mark, games. I'm going to do a starting five with results in them. And not just on Monday. Yes. And not just on Monday when I announce who won the golf tournament and who won the NASCAR race.
All right. Before we went to break, we put our poll question up. And you changed your mind kind of sort of from your original thought when we discussed this. And I would like to hear why. The question is simply this. 10 years ago, LeBron James made the decision, took his talents to South Beach. And at that moment, the players took the power in free agency. And they've had it ever since. Mm-hmm. Is the league better now because of it? I say that it is.
And I say that the league as a whole is not, because players consolidate the power. They want to win. And so they're only going to go to one of 5 places. And that's it. And they're probably going to keep going back to those places. You know, one of the great mysteries is that, well, it's not a mystery. The Knicks are a grease fire. But in theory, one of the cities that the NBA players and franchises that they would have flocked to would have been the Knicks. But since they are so bad that KD and Kyrie decided, well, we'll go to New York, but we're going to go to the Nets. So, okay, you finally had a couple of guys pair up, and they're going to go to New York. So we got guys who decide to go to Los Angeles. There's 2 franchises there to split their talents amongst. You got 2 franchises in New York. What we've yet to see are a couple of guys get together and go to Chicago. My guess is that will happen here in the coming years. But if it does, Anthony Davis will likely lead that because that's where he's from. Everybody seemingly wants to go to Miami. You know,
and I will tell you
Orlando. Remember 20 years ago when it was McGrady and it was Grant Hill and they almost got Tim Duncan to go. The thought was between the 2 franchises, Orlando was going to become the destination franchise.
Got a text earlier this morning. Shaq took him to a final. What's happened to the Magic since? And they've been good teams since. You know, I mean, they've been good players since. And they've lost all of them to free agency.
Now, it seems like forever ago. But Dwight Howard took them to a final, too. They went to back-to-back conference finals, and they went to an NBA final and lost to the Lakers.
But even with Dwight Howard, guys left. For whatever reason, when their contracts were up, they left Orlando.
Yes.
And the other franchise, David, in this is that the Atlanta Hawks, of a city that it seems that every black man wants to go to and visit. Atlanta's a great city. They can't attract a free agent to save their life, and I don't get it.
No,
I really don't understand that.
I'm with
you.
The
Falcons haven't done it either, by and large. They've drafted good players, but free agents don't run to Atlanta, and I don't. Someone has to help me with that. I don't get it.
Especially since, we have said that if there was a black capital city in America, it would be Atlanta. Okay, we really feel in sports, and the black athlete loves going to Atlanta. They love visiting Atlanta. There are famous places to buy their clothes. There are famous places to get their shoes.
There's been a whole hip hop scene in and around Atlanta. You know, a great hip hop scene. So there's music, there's culture, there's things to do. I mean, first off, I love the city. I love Atlanta. I lived there for a while. But that one baffles me.
Right. I mean, you and I have always been baffled as to, man, you know, why is it? But then again, to me, it comes down to the fact that the Hawks have never won. I mean, Mark, I'm pretty sure since they've been in Atlanta, they've never been to a conference final. You know, Mike Fratello and the Doc Rivers, Dominique Hawks of the mid to late 80s, you know, they had that epic series with Bird and the Celtics, but that was a second-round series that went 7 when Dominique and Bird put on that show in Game 7 and Boston won it close. I think it was 87. That was the second round. The Celtics then played the Pistons after that. I mean, that's how deep the East was then. It was ridiculous, actually, how deep the East was. And that's why a lot of Celtics fans and a lot of basketball fans would laugh about how easy it was for the Lakers to get to the finals. And then the East was murderer's row, if you will.
Believe it or not, David, I didn't know this because I just had to put it up. In 2014, they made it to the conference finals. They were swept by the Cavs.
Wow. Okay.
14-15. You know, I mean, but again, it was an afterthought because they got to the finals and were bounced in 4.
So since they've moved to Atlanta, they have made the conference finals one time and got swept. So they have never won a game beyond the second round of the playoffs as a franchise since they moved to Atlanta. And I'm guessing that's why they can't get. Now, maybe because of the great young guard that they have now, that somebody will want to go play with them, and maybe they could turn this around. But the more I thought about it, Mark, while LeBron going to the Heat was phenomenal for the NBA, I mean, if there's a word beyond great, that's the box I would check. And I think LeBron then going back to Cleveland and winning was good. But like Mark, I think it's important, the Greek Freak needs to stay in Milwaukee. I mean, he really does. I mean, I think for the league, they've got to make sure that, if you're not a marquee city and you're not a marquee franchise, that, your star. I mean, the Greek Freak is arguably their best player since Kareem. And they've had some great players over the years. They had Moncrief and Cummings in the 80s. They had Ray Allen. They had the big dog there, Glenn Robinson. They've had some players. But, I mean, he's arguably their best player since Kareem.
Yes. I don't even think it's arguably, David.
That's 45 years ago. I mean, he needs to stay. They need to be able to keep him the way that the Chiefs are able to keep Mahomes. And if you think about it, what's happening in the NBA does not happen in the NFL. It's a couple of players have tried in hockey, Mark. A couple of guys got together a few years ago and decided they wanted to go home. Home was Minnesota. So they played for the Wild. Now, the Wild haven't done much since they went back home. But there have been a couple of guys who every now and then they say, hey, let's go together, and a team can afford them both, and they take them in. We have thought that the Lightning, it could be one of those teams. It's Florida. We all know and they're a well-run franchise.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work in hockey. You can put one line together. It doesn't mean that you're going to be successful. Right. It just doesn't. 3 basketball players change everything.
Right.
If you take
the lottery to the finals,
take Austin, I don't know, pick 3 NHL guys, pick 3 great NHL guys, and we're going to send them to a team. I don't know if it makes a damn bit of difference. 3 baseball players that are not starting pitchers, don't know if it makes the same difference. And you brought it, you're right. Maybe the Greek Freak needs to stay there. I looked up another team that's near and dear to your heart, the T-Wolves.
Yeah, made the conference finals once under Garnett.
Right.
Lost in 6 to the Lakers.
They started out 7 straight years missing the playoffs. Then they made the playoffs for 9 straight years.
Had 1 run.
8 straight years, sorry. 8 years and had 1 run, lost in the conference finals. They've been back to the play. That year, by the way, was the 03-04 season. They've been back to the playoffs once.
Right, and they fired the coach the next year, Thibodeau. Right.
They're a completely irrelevant franchise.
And when players put in their 7 years, because they get their initial 4-year contract and then they sign a 3 to 4 year extension, and usually they sign it with 1 year left on their original deal. And so that's why when you draft a great player, the thought is right now, well, we've got him for 7 years, because no great young player has walked after his rookie deal. That's actually what Porzingis threatened to do to the Knicks. He said, you better trade me because I'm not signing a second contract here. Now, a lot of people think the Knicks should have called this bluff, because he would have made far more money staying in New York, getting that contract there, than if he even the contract he got with Dallas. Okay, but never mind. So you got 7 years. Well, first off, a lot of these great young players are not doing 4 years of college, so you're not getting them at 21 or 22. You're getting them a lot of times at about 19 or 20. So by the time that they're available to hit free agency, they're 26, 27 years old. I mean, they're in their prime. They're just reaching their prime, if you believe the old 28 to 32 is really your athletic prime, physically, mentally, etc. And so then they look around, they find another 27-year-old guy, and they go, okay, where are we going?
And Minneapolis and Milwaukee
are
not destinations.
No. And if it wasn't for LeBron, it wouldn't have been Cleveland.
No, and I mean, even like Portland with a great player, and Lillard's now, on the cover of the new NBA 2K game. I mean, this guy's a star. Having trouble getting much of anything else out there with him.
I mean, as a Miller Moulton fan in the Twitch TV chat room pointed out, heck, Philadelphia can't get people to really team up and do it there either. And Philly's a great city, and it's a great sports city.
So in his question is, what are the cities? Because you said it. It's the two LAs, the two LA teams. Mm-hmm. I do think, well, I wonder, is Golden State that franchise? If this is done, because let's just say Clay doesn't get back to form and no KD and it's just Draymond and Steph. I don't know if that's not good enough. Was it a one-time thing because they hit lightning in a bottle? Or is the city a destination for players? Would be for me.
Right. You love San Francisco.
Oh.
You love the Bay Area. But, I mean, I can argue, Mark, that I think there's two right now. That there's two. L.A. and Miami.
I think Houston to a certain extent.
Who have, they had to make a trade for Chris Paul, and technically they made a trade for Westbrook. And they traded to acquire Harden. I don't know, who's decided. Remember, was it Draymond? Who was the Warrior who was going to Houston and then he decided to come back? They had somebody who was leaving Golden State and he was going to Houston, and they were able to, I think, talk him back. But right now, the city that seems to be able to get these players to decide this is where I want to live. And, oh, by the way, the franchises have their act together, which is great. We can win here. I think are L.A. and Miami.
Yeah, and David, Miami's going to have to get somebody again for you to prove that right, because that was 10 years ago. And since LeBron left, no one's really wanted to come. I mean, Butler came, but that's one guy.
I understand. I will say that they had a bit of a cap situation, and this offseason, and certainly by next, they're going to have all the cap room in the world.
And we'll see.
And we'll see.
We'll see if Spoelstra and Riley are still enough and the city's enough.
But like Dallas has put two guys together. Can they get a third? Utah's got a couple of good guys together. And most people believe, hey, win as much as you can now because, let's face it, nobody stays here.
Denver has got a nice nucleus of young guys that if they got one more would be pretty close.
Right. And as you mentioned, Portland, but when's the last time you've had an NBA free agent say that one of their top three destinations was Denver or Portland?
David, when have they said it's just not L.A.? I know you keep saying Miami, but right now Miami's a distant second to the L.A. market. Distant.
Now, like I said, Miami put themselves at a bit of a disadvantage here in the last couple of years. They've had some cap issues. All right, so even if guys wanted to, all right, they couldn't. But, I mean, think about it. No Chicago. Okay, New York finally got two guys, Kyrie and KD. All right, and both injured this year, and we'll see what it is they do next year. And who knows if they are healthy and play the way they're capable of, and then maybe Brooklyn's able to get a third, and the Nets do what people have thought for years that the Knicks would be able to do, which is attract the talent to New York. Even though playing for the Brooklyn Nets, I would argue, is less than playing for the LA Clippers. That in New York, that I think the Clippers have a higher profile and a higher standing in the league than the Brooklyn Nets do in New York and with the league.
That's a great question. And I mean, I know that's your part of the world. I think you're right. Boy, I mean, who's considered the redheaded stepchild more, the Brooklyn Nets or the LA Clippers?
Right.
It's a great question. And I'll be fascinated with Kyrie and KD healthy, what that argument would be.
So, but it's our poll question. 10 years ago tonight, LeBron made his decision and took his talents to South Beach. And so we ask you, that was the beginning of the players in the NBA taking the power and determining where it is they're going to play. forcing organizations to trade them, joining forces as free agents, whether it be duos or trios. Is the league better off? Now, I split my answer in half. Mark believes the league is better off. I believe LeBron to the Heat worked out great because they became villains, and that works. You had almost the whole rest of the league against the Miami Heat. That worked for 4 years. I mean, damn near half a decade. You can't ask for more than that if you're David Stern. Your last few years in office, LeBron took his talents to South Beach. I mean, thank you, LeBron. Made my life really easy. But is it better for the league? The players taking the power. And they ain't giving it back, by the way.
Oh,
they're
no.
They're not going to be able to get it back. I don't believe.
And the only thing that's bad about it right now is that the franchises that seem to have the most together are out west. And the players are being sent west because that's where they want to play. I mean, right now, I wish Atlanta were a destination for players. I wish Orlando. I wish Miami was a destination where guys wanted to go. Because if you added 2 or 3 more teams with Milwaukee, Toronto, and Boston, you might have a pretty competitive East that would be fun to watch. The only thing that we've been screwed by the last 3-4 years is that 80% of the really good teams have been west of the Mississippi, and you have to stay up, for me, too damn late to watch the good regular season games. That's all. It's just geography.
Now, in fairness to the NBA as a whole, I mean, Mark, a lot of people like to go back to, Magic and Larry and Jordan. Well, all right, let's go back to the 80s. How many teams year in, year out did we view as contenders for the title? Not good teams that can win 50 games. Boy, they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs. Wouldn't want to face them in the first or second round. But I'm talking title contenders.
Well, the Celtics, the Lakers, and the Sixers for a long time.
And then the Sixers got replaced by the Pistons.
And, yeah, they did, but it took a while. I mean, you and I have discussed this.
Yeah, it took half a decade.
Because the Knicks were good there for a bit.
Yeah.
The Heat, not the Heat, the Hawks were pretty good, as we've talked about.
Yeah, but
but there was but basically you had to go through, and this is the other side, David. It was Bird, McHale, and Parrish. Funny, that's a big 3. Oh yeah, and while they drafted Larry Bird, it was because Red Auerbach knew more about the draft process than anybody else. They stole Larry Bird.
Right.
Now, every other franchise was stupid.
Right.
And you can't blame the Celtics for being smarter than everyone else, but you wouldn't be able to pull that off today.
Correct.
And somehow the Lakers get Magic with the first overall pick.
Right.
And then ended up with Worthy.
Correct. Right, with the second overall pick, I believe, a couple years
I
later.
mean,
Yeah,
so
right.
So that whole time with the Lakers, you had Kareem, Magic, and Worthy.
Yeah, that worked.
By the way, with Cooper and Jamal Wilkes and, at one point, Bob McAdoo coming off the bench. I mean, come on. We're acting like there weren't big 3s then. Hell, there were big 6s.
I mean, the Lakers almost were unchallenged for a decade in the West. I mean, the only 2 times in the decade of the 80s that they didn't make the finals, the Houston Rockets beat them both times, 81 and 86. And they had big guys. They had Malone, and then obviously they had Akeem and Sampson. So the Lakers were virtually unchallenged. There were good teams, Denver, Dallas, Utah, Houston.
San Antonio had a nice, they had Gervin, but they couldn't beat anybody.
No, San Antonio got to a conference final one time.
And Phoenix was really good at the end of the 70s and in the early part of the 80s.
Right.
But
they had good teams, but for the most part, the Lakers, you just knew, well, these are good teams, but they can't beat the Lakers. And then in the East, you had 2 or 3 teams. So, the glory days of the 80s, and you had 4 legitimate title contenders year in, year out. Tops. Well, what do we think we have now in the NBA, Mark? I mean, out west, we think we have both LA teams.
Right.
And nobody's given any. Now, I do think this could be a crazy year.
The playoffs, I think Houston with this season is intriguing, but I don't think they can beat both of them, David.
But I think it's possible we could have, with having everybody getting back together again, and teams are not going to be 100%. The chance you could lose a key guy to the coronavirus. I do think it's possible to have a bit of a crazy scenario in this year's playoffs. But if this year had played itself out, let's be honest, if this year had played itself out, quote unquote, normally, the two LA teams out west, period. And then in the East, it would have been Milwaukee, it would have been Toronto, and people would have debated, could we put Boston on the list? It would have been no more than 5. Now, they would have said Philly could be a tough out, Miami could be a tough out, this, that, and the other thing, but not win 4 rounds of the playoffs. Nobody thinks they're winning 16 playoff games.
Philly would have been intriguing, but I'm with you on your point. Just because when you're 29-2 at home, you're a tough out in the postseason.
Yeah, but when you only have home court in the first round.
I got you, but right. You have to win 1 to get to 7, if you know what I mean. Sure. That's all.
No, yeah, they would have been a team that's like, boy, I'm not sure I want to play them. But I don't think they can win a title. They're too flawed. Heck, they don't even like each other. Miller and Moulton. The Ivy League, reportedly later today, is going to become the first league to move its fall sports to spring. And obviously that includes football. Lance Meadow covers the Ivy League and Columbia for Westwood One and Sirius XM. And the Versatile One will join us next on Miller and Moulton. Thanks so much for being with us. Today was the day when in 25 minutes here on Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio.
This is the
Look at that. Look at us going NBA. Top of the 7 o'clock hour for a full-on NBA segment. That doesn't happen every day around here.
Don't know if it's going to happen again, even when the season resumes.
I don't think it will. We have an NBA poll question. We've done 2 NBA segments today. Holy blank.
That's how big a deal the decision was, ladies and gentlemen.
What's funny is it wasn't anywhere in the On This Day stuff. I'm so glad you said it because I wouldn't even have had it, David.
10 years ago tonight.
New routines, the constant bombardment of bad news, and trying to keep you and your family
pretty sure it was tonight.
It's Frank for Center for Men's Health. During these stressful times, your mood is so critical, and nothing's more important to a guy's mood than testosterone. The single greatest
broadcast live July 8th.
Low T
Today is the 8th, right?
And the single greatest change for men that get low T care is a greatly improved mood. Many are grumpy when they start, and most can't believe how much their mood improves once they get treated.
The triple third person in one sentence was unbelievable.
For a couple of years, and recently I've lost 20 pounds.
What, LeBron?
Yes.
I have the energy to work out from home, and that'll put you in a good mood.
He went third person 3 times in 6 seconds.
It's convenient, affordable, and above all, safe. And with locations all up and down West Florida, there's one near you right now.
I've decided I'm going to take my talents to South Beach. It was something along. It was just. It screamed 80s and cocaine.
Well, yeah, at one point, doesn't he have near the end of a quote something about LeBron's got to do what's best for LeBron? Or
yes, that's
like
what
that.
It was. Yes.
So we'll flat out give you more. Over mileage on your lease or upside down in your loan, Caliana Kia can get you out of your
Boy, I'll tell you.
into a new Kia for less.
And he raised $4 million for the Boys and Girls Club of America that night by doing it the way he did it.
So, Rex Chapman on Twitter is a riot. But
he's blocker charge.
But the blocker charge, but he's also been reposting all of these people being racist. So the latest one is this lady in Raleigh who called the police on 2 Black and Latino residents because she didn't recognize them and did so because, in quotes, she knows everybody that lives in the neighborhood.
And they live there.
Well, they live there. Of course they do.
Of course.
But this woman's a realtor. So I just looked at the thread and someone goes, you want to write a Yelp review for go ahead. And I started looking at the Yelp reviews.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my God. If you're looking for a racist realtor, look no further. She's right here. The most racist and POS realtor in the Raleigh area. She is delusional, psycho, a liar, and a pathetic person overall.
The new spicy Western bacon cheeseburger at Hardee's. Feed your happy. Limited time only at participating. Participation may vary. Hardee's presents the Southwest Omelet, Biscuit, and Burrito. Wanted in 42 states on charges of bringing a sweat to the brow of breakfast lovers
Oh,
with low
God.
spice tolerance. We start with a made-from-scratch biscuit. And then we add a fluffy omelet full of melted cheese, crispy bacon, and
I'm amazed it took Southwest Florida this long to go viral with
you can get it all wrapped up in a burrito.
some sort of masked racist thing. I mean, it took all the way till the guy at Costco yesterday.
Well, but I thought that incident was from a while ago, but it was only posted 2 or 3 days ago.
Oh, really?
Maybe I read it wrong.
I just, the only reason I knew it is that Chris Baker, who listens to our show, after I made the comment about Costco and the guy without the mask being muscle bound, he tweets it at me. He goes, "Was this the guy?" And I'm like, "No, my guy was younger, a little bit more muscle bound, but had the same basic attitude." And I don't say things. I may give a look, but I'm not going to Costco to get into a fight with anybody anymore. If I saw I will say this: if I saw someone do something bad to a woman, a child, or a racial thing, I would. But the mask thing, it's not worth me getting into a fight over.
It was shocking to me to realize that the person who politely asked him to wear a mask was an old woman. You would have thought that even if you didn't want to, I mean, it's an elderly woman. You're really going to go after an elderly woman?
No, we did the Deshaun stuff earlier, Hops. Ooh. We have a guest right here?
Yeah, Lance Meadow.
Give me a second.
Huh? Lance.
Yep, not Larry.
Right.
You're live.
"29 minutes before 8 o'clock as we are just past the halfway point of Miller and Moulton on this hump day. Thanks so much for being with us. Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio. We're streaming at millerandmoulton.com, broadcasting live on the Miller and Moulton YouTube and twitch.tv channels. Rob Ellis from 94 WIP in Philly will join us at the top of the hour, and we'll revisit our conversation that we had last hour about Deshaun Jackson and his lovely social media posts from yesterday.
And his love of all people.
Yes, and Seth Everett will join us in an hour for his weekly chat. But it's a pleasure to welcome Lance Meadow. He covers the Ivy League in Columbia as part of his many duties while being all over SiriusXM. You can follow Lance on Twitter at Lance Meadow. Lance, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Hope you and the family are doing well these days. How are you?
I am doing very well. Guys, I hope you're doing well as well, and it's a pleasure to be on the program. Thanks so much for having me.
Lance, your thoughts on what the Ivy League is about to do? They will be the most prominent league to this point to move their fall sports to the spring. Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they are going to wind up doing. Remember, when the NCAA tournament slowly shut down, March Madness slowly shut down, guys, the Ivy League was the first one to cancel its men's and women's basketball tournaments, and that came back on March 10th. And if you remember, everybody's initial reaction was, well, wait a minute, the Ivy League's getting very much ahead of itself. And then all of a sudden, it turned out that everybody else followed the Ivy League's lead. So I think here we go again, where the Ivy League could very well be setting the tone for college football. The Ivy League, it goes without saying, is not nearly as prominent compared to the Big Five power conferences. So I don't think economically they're hit as hard if they move it to the spring. And I think actually it may turn out to be a positive, because if indeed everybody else doesn't follow the lead, perhaps it gets a little bit more notoriety in terms of people paying attention to Ivy League football. There are a number of guys that have come out of that league that have made the NFL. As somebody who has covered that league and has been invested in that league over the last few years, I think it's extremely competitive. I think it's exciting, even though they don't send their team to the playoff. And I actually think it could provide a different angle and once again give the Ivy League a platform that it normally does not have come the fall when it's competing with every other power college football conference.
Well, Lance, you are, the comments about basketball, you're right on, but I don't know why the Ivy League had to show off and do this again. Once was enough. I mean, they already ruined our damn March Madness. What were they thinking? Lance, is there any talk of a start date? I mean, David, my co-host, has brought up spring football now a couple of times and brought up that the Ivy League, when this first came about. My only question is, we don't really have any ideas to when, do we? Is this going to be a February start? Is this going to be a March start? Do they want to get it done before graduation? Are there any dates at all put with this?
I haven't heard any ballpark dates, and it's a great question. I think right now the curveball, guys, is the fact that, remember, Harvard came out earlier this week and announced that it's not allowing the entire student body to return to campus. They're only going to keep it at about 40% density, and it's going to be all online courses. And then some of the other Ivy League institutions have followed, and something that resembles Harvard, they're either going to have sophomores and seniors on campus for the first semester, then they're going to bring freshmen and juniors for the second semester. There's some variation across the Ivy League, and I will tell you this, from conversations that I've had with coaches and athletic executives, they've made it very clear that the Ivy League's philosophy is the students are on campus, that gives them the green light to compete athletically. The students are not on campus, that provides a huge obstacle. So that's why my response would be, I don't think there is any definitive date because things very much are going to be fluid and they're going to evolve month in and month out. So I think the goal is that maybe there's a vaccine come early next year, and that obviously is an extremely optimistic viewpoint, and that maybe they could get things going when normally the second semester tends to start for most institutions, which, as you guys well know, is maybe late January, early February, perhaps a little bit later than that, because I know Brown, for example, is moving to the tri-semester structure, which it had never done previously, to avoid having all of its students on campus at the same time. So once again, if you don't have all of these institutions on the same level, I think that makes it that much more complicated and messy. But I would think perhaps early February, mid-February would be something that at least is realistic to target.
He's Lance Meadow. He covers the Ivy League in Columbia for Westwood One, and he's on a variety of Sirius XM channels, including Mad Dog Radio and NFL Radio. You can follow Lance on Twitter at Lance Meadow. And Lance, this may venture a little bit off of sports, but what I think many of us, not just in our neck of the woods here in Southwest Florida, but if you're sitting somewhere else in the rest of the country, you're, I think, finding it interesting that the Northeast got hit the hardest and first. But the Northeast right now is in as good a shape as any part of this country in terms of dealing with the coronavirus. And yet it's the Division III conference in Pennsylvania and Maryland, which is canceled fall sports. It's the Ivy League, which is deciding that we're moving fall sports to late winter or the spring season. Whereas the rest of us in SEC, ACC, whatever country, we're full steam ahead about playing come late August, early September. I mean, it's interesting from our point of view that the part of the country which seems as if maybe the NBA should have moved their games to right now is the part of the country that's saying, yeah, we're taking the rest of the year off.
Well, it's a very good point, but I think also the fact that that segment of the country, as you just noted, was hit first. I think that segment realizes they don't want to go backwards and they don't want to revisit where it started, which was the epicenter of this horrendous pandemic. So having experienced it first, they want to be extra cautious. I'm based in the heart of it right now. I'm in New York City, and certainly life is not anywhere near back to normal because they don't want to reopen things too quickly and then take about 17 steps backwards. So I think it is somewhat understandable why the Northeast is not necessarily in a rush. But here's the other aspect that I think is interesting that we haven't necessarily discussed, guys, this morning. The Ivy League and some of these other D3 schools that you referenced, they certainly follow a different path than some of these other power conferences. And I'm not saying that the power conferences don't stress the importance of the academics, but the Ivy League in particular, remember, the reason why those institutions exist is academics first, athletics is the complementary aspect. And they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that the academics gets number one priority, the safety of the student body gets number one priority, and in the event that they get check marks in those departments, okay, then it's clear to compete in athletics. If the first two don't get anywhere near check marks, then we're more than willing to sacrifice the other aspect. The power conferences and the schools down south that you're referencing, once again, I am not generalizing in any way and saying that they do not prioritize academics, but I do think, guys, we would be naive if we overlook the fact that the financial consequences of not playing football, despite we're in the midst of a pandemic, there's a lot more costly on the line from that standpoint than perhaps some of the schools in the Northeast, such as the Ivy League and D3. So I think those are the other factors that are very much in balance that are perhaps outweighing the risk of what's going on with respect to this horrendous virus right now.
And Lance, your point's well taken. I will say the only thing as someone who has a kid in college, if you were telling me I had to pay that kind of money for my kid to go to Harvard online, I don't know what my answer would be, because I don't know how we're checking off academics teaching kids online, but that's the choice that they made. But Lance, you cover a lot of other sports. You cover the Giants. I'm just going to throw it in here underhanded. We've got basketball starting in a couple of weeks. We've got baseball starting and hockey starting in a couple of weeks. The MLS is starting today. The NFL says they're starting on time. How many of the current seasons do you think actually finish? Do you think the NBA is going to start and finish, or do you think we're going to come up and get going and have a critical halt because of the pandemic?
Well, I think that's, once again, a very interesting question, and not to be a doomsday type of individual, but I am a bit skeptical, I would say, guys, across the board. I think the NBA structurally probably has the best chance because of this bubble environment. However, I'm a bit skeptical that you're going to get hundreds of NBA players after 2 months in a bubble to say, yeah, I just want to continue to hang around, and then you bring their families in and you're right next door to Disney World. I just think human element comes into play and could very well throw a curveball. So I'm worried that maybe the NBA starts off smoothly. Whether or not it finishes, I think, is going to fall on the patience and the dedication of the players. And I don't know necessarily if all of them can last 3 or 4 months. MLS already eliminated one team, Dallas, because of the fact that there were multiple positive tests. So, they were heading down to Orlando, and they couldn't even get a tournament up and running with every team taking part. So once again, that's a red flag. Major League Baseball is going to have teams scattered across the country. They're already having issues with testing. And once again, it's going to come down to the discipline of each team. And once again, can they get through travel smoothly? And then, of course, the NFL is very similar to Major League Baseball. Now, from a selfish perspective, guys, yeah, if there's any league I want to see start to finish, it's definitely the NFL. I've got investments in that and professional investments in that. So I'll be the first one to be clear cut and dry with you from that standpoint. But yeah, I'm extremely worried, because whenever you have teams traveling across the country, as we just talked about, and dealing with this virus on many different levels, you just don't know when a spike is going to happen, when a team is going to be impacted. So outside of the bubble environment, I think everybody's rolling the dice. I would say, from a general sense, I don't think every season is going to be completed. I think it's going to fall on the players and self-discipline, and the group that can accomplish that the best, that's the one that we're going to actually be able to crown a champion this season.
And Lance, quickly, there's some talk, some power brokers in college basketball. They want to move the season up 2 weeks, I guess, to give themselves a buffer that if teams have to pause for 10 days or 14 days, that they'll be able to get their entire season in before the NCAA tournament. Your thoughts as to what if the college basketball season started as soon as October 27th? Does that make any sense to you?
Well, I think there is some rhyme and reason behind that. I don't disagree with that philosophy. I'll give you the perfect parallel. We were talking about academics earlier. I know there are a number of institutions where they want to start classes a few weeks early. Instead of starting it in September, they want to start it in August, because it's the same mindset. The fact that let's try to wrap up the academic coursework by Thanksgiving, so that in case there is a huge spike because of the change in weather and so forth, okay, we can get the student body off campus. But while that's a great idea and concept, we still don't know how this virus is going to play out. It's so fluid. Week to week, as you guys well know, day to day, it changes. So, you can have an ideal plan, and you could say, we're going to start the basketball season in October. We're going to try to get as much non-conference games out of the way, so that when conference games start, maybe since we have a little bit more flexibility because all those teams are in the same conference, we'll have some wiggle room. But what happens in January if something happens that they don't anticipate and they can't even complete the conference schedule, or they can't get March Madness rolling? I think, once again, anything you can do to try to squeeze in as many games should be commended, but it doesn't mean you're going to finish. You could tell me they're going to start the college basketball season, guys, next week. Okay, do they know what's going to happen in September? Do we know what the country's going to look like in October? There's so much unknown that no plan is bulletproof. So it does make sense. I would agree with it from that standpoint, but it doesn't mean that there's not going to be any obstacles and hurdles moving forward. It's all about the completion. Anybody could tell you they want to start next week, but can you guarantee me, as we were talking earlier, that you're going to be able to finish by April 1? And if you can't tell me that, I don't think in the end, guys, it makes any difference when they push the start date up to.
Lance, thanks for agreeing to do this. We really appreciate it. Enjoyed your insights, and best of luck with everything that you have on your plate, and hopefully we can talk again.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on, guys, and hope you stay safe and healthy down in Florida. Thanks so much.
Lance Meadow covers the Ivy League in Columbia for Westwood One, and he's on a variety of Sirius XM channels, most notably Mad Dog Radio and NFL Radio. You can follow Lance on Twitter at Lance Meadow, and Meadow is spelled without an A, Medow. Lance Meadow joining us here on Miller and Moulton. Today was the day when. Coming up, we'll head to Philly in a little more than 15 minutes, talk to Rob Ellis about what Deshaun Jackson had to say yesterday and whether or not he has much of a future with the Eagles. And Seth Everett will join us in about 40 minutes' time as well. Miller and Moulton on this hump day. Thanks for being with us. Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio.
Drive home with the Doug Gottlieb Show.
That's a lot of energy.
Avery Bradley.
That's Lance Meadow.
You worked with him before?
I have worked with him once, but I used when I was getting the steady Saturday shift, he would do the show before me. We would go into one another. He would do 11 to 3, and I would do 3 to 7.
Do you guys do a segment together then? I know they do.
He wouldn't even promote the show. He has a final segment that he does. It's a 2-minute thing. It's like his final thought, and he ends it, and he thanks his producers, and he says, Lance Meadow, I'm out. Yeah. No. Never once promoted the next show that was coming. I used to laugh.
Funny. In one of the Deitch's article yesterday, maybe I'm sorry. It was the one John put up. The
Bobby Barack.
Yeah, but basically stating that Mad Dog Radio has a better lineup than ESPN.
Well, he said the way I read it was they definitely have a better afternoon show, like drive time show. Their argument is that Russo is now the best national radio show between Gottlieb, Russo, what ESPN's going to have.
It is. I mean, I'm seeing all this stuff. It is something. Mike Golick, 20 years on ESPN Radio. That is one hell of a run.
22. Yeah.
That's a hell of a run.
He told when they did that Mike and Mike thing, and that basically his wife picked Greeny. That they were having, I forget who his first one was, and he left after about a year or what have you, and they just brought in a series of people to do shows with him. And Golick would go home and would be like, what do you think? And that, I think his wife's name's Christine.
Yes.
But that she was the one that said, he's your guy. That works. Golick loves Arizona. I think that ESPN's going to try to keep him, and they're going to try to keep him as a college football analyst, that he'll do games based out of Arizona, because I think he's going to move. I mean, Golick's in his late 50s. I think they're going to move. Kids are grown.
Western bacon cheeseburger. It's just like the Western bacon cheeseburger with charbroiled beef, crispy bacon and onion rings, and topped with tangy barbecue sauce.
Do you know the idea I had?
Spicy jalapeno,
John
pepper jack cheese.
Was like, so what do you think happens to Golick? And I said, hey, if you're NBC, I understand this guy's a bigger name, but Doug Flutie does Notre Dame football right now.
Feed your happy. Limited time
okay.
Participating Hardee's restaurants.
And I'm just wondering, Notre Dame has kind of put their tentacles into that NBC broadcast. They've gotten rid of certain broadcasters because they haven't liked them. They've done it with their radio network in the last 15 years twice. They've done it on NBC. And I'm just wondering, do you think NBC says, or Notre Dame says to NBC, hey, can we get one of our guys on the broadcast? You know, a Notre Dame guy.
Feed your happy. Limited time only at participating.
And does Golick end up, not this year, but does Golick end up doing Notre Dame football on NBC?
Interesting. By the way, is it now factual that Tom Izzo didn't cheat?
For over 40 years, we've been doing business.
Why?
The two best players in the country have signed with Michigan State in the last week. Now that you can get paid as a college player, and they're probably a little more hesitant to write a check because of the whole Zion and everything else, Michigan State has gotten 2 stars. Now, I don't know if either of them will ever play a second in East Lansing. And you know I don't care. But, I mean, the only thing I thought of, apparently Izzo really doesn't pay anybody, because now that we can't, they're going to play for him.
Well, I know the first 5-star that committed to him basically said, listen, he's been recruiting me since 7th grade.
And then the other kid, there's a picture of this other kid from Ypsilanti, this is Amoni Bates. There's a picture of Howard, Izzo, the Eastern coach, and Jalen Rose all in the front row watching him play high school ball.
Yep. Stuff to talk about. We back it up. Good sports talk radio on Fox Sports Radio. Here we go. Now back to Miller and Moulton. No. This is Miller and Moulton. You're live.
Nine minutes before 8 o'clock. Thanks so much for being with us. Miller and Moulton, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio. You can chime into the show via text or a call at 479-5551, 479-5551. You can also go to that Mark Miller, the David Moulton on Twitter, or millerandmoulton.com and take part in our daily poll question. It was 10 years ago tonight that LeBron decided to take his talents to South Beach. The decision. Is the league better off with the players now exercising their power and determining where it is they're going versus how the league operated before the Big Three got together in Miami and other arrangements have been made since? Yes or no? Is the NBA better off since the decision and the dynamics that went into it?
Well, the decision and other things that happened today, we'll talk about them right now. Because it's
Miller and Moulton's Today Was the Day When, giving you the history of today's date so you're a beacon of useless knowledge around the office.
Useless, but a lot of fun to talk about.
This is Today Was the Day When. Fox Sports Radio and FoxSportsFM.com.
David, we have to go back to the end of the 19th century. 1889. 2 significant things happened today in 1889. 1, the Wall Street Journal begins publishing. 2, John L. Sullivan KOs Jake Kilrain in the last bare-knuckle bout in 75 rounds.
Wow. Wow. And we won't even go 15 anymore.
Right. That was 5 of them.
Whew.
1963, reports of Charlie Filling's intention to move the Kansas City Athletics to Oakland surfaced. 1978, Borg wins his 3rd straight, taking out Jimmy Connors in straight sets. 84, McEnroe would take out Connors in straight sets, defending his crown.
He beat him, I believe, 6-1, 6-1, 6-2.
Correct.
Jimmy, no one ever beat Jimmy Connors in a Grand Slam final the way McEnroe did in 84. That was the year that John he only lost 3 matches all year. He was on top of the world.
Today in 1988, Bud Black sets a club record for the Cleveland Indians by hitting 3 batters in an inning. And the Miami Arena opens in Miami, Florida. Boris Becker loses to Stefan Edberg for his 2nd straight crown. I saw the first one. This one went 5. I was there in 89. Steffi wins her 6th Wimbledon in 95, beating Arantxa Sanchez Vicario in 3. Venus wins her first Grand Slam title by beating Lindsay Davenport today in 2000. 2007, Roger wins his 5th consecutive, beating Rafi in 5.
Rafi gets revenge the next year, beating Federer in 5.
2 things happened today 10 years ago. We've talked about one throughout the show, the decision. The other, Paul Goydos becomes the 4th and oldest player to shoot 59 at the John Deere, 12 birdies, 6 pars. And Federer in 2012 beats Andy Murray in 4 for his 7th Wimbledon and 17th Grand Slam title. If you were born today, you share your birthday with John Pemberton. He invented Coca-Cola, born today in 1931. Ferdinand von Zeppelin, no, not the inventor of the band Led Zeppelin. He founded the Zeppelin Airship Company, born today in 1838. John D. Rockefeller, born in 1839. He owned every one of you for a short period of time. Rune Arledge, born today in 1931.
Wow.
Maybe the greatest sports television person ever. The insight that he had into what we now all watch today. Janice Pennington, born today in 1942. That's Janice from The Price is Right, everybody.
Ah!
American Playboy Playmate, May 71, for those of you that are collectors. Jack Lambert, born today in 1952. He beat up the doctor.
Also author of one of the greatest lines ever. They lost the AFC Championship game to the Raiders. The media came into the locker room. He said, you tell those blankety blanks across the hall, you give me a 6-pack, a pack of smokes, and a half an hour, and we'll play again.
Kevin Bacon, born today in 1958. Toby Keith, born today in 1961. And Beck, the singer, is 50 years old today. And that is, today was the day when, on this July the 8th.
10 years ago, King James made the decision, took his talents to South Beach. At that moment, the players took the power in free agency. Is the league better now because of it? 59% of you say no. David Dorsey, a frequent listener of the show, said the employees are better off. Not so sure about the league.
And I would challenge all of you, and we kind of went through that at 7 o'clock. The greatness that everybody talks about in the league of the Celtics and Lakers, look at the competition they had through that decade. And look how many teams were dominant then. How many teams really challenged the Chicago Bulls when they were on their magical run? This is no different than any other period of the NBA. It's just that the players now have the power, and that doesn't settle well with a lot of folks. Miller and Moulton.
It's Fred Kobe with your Kobe.
Did you text Rob?
Didn't know I was supposed to.
It's on the thing.
My clear answer is the right system for
I'd
the right
missed
reasons.
it too.
I also prefer American-made products, which really narrows your choices. When you invest in our Florida Reserve private brand, it's made completely in the United States.
I saw it at 5 a.m. and forgot about it.
Meets the
My
United
bad.
States standards. It has a 10-year parts and labor no-hassle policy, and it's only available through Kobe Cooling. We set a higher standard, and we're proud to lead the way.
Well, I just texted him now.
Spot, Kobe Cooling's Florida Reserve, made in the USA.
He'll
When
say
you think of
yes.
air conditioning companies,
He always
Yeah,
says
it does.
Kobe Cooling.
Yeah.
No nonsense and no pressure. We're the company your neighbors use. License CACO 57313. Kobe, the most trusted name in the business since 1949.
Yep, he's good.
Serving Southwest Florida for almost 70 years.
For professional roofing, the name you need to know is DR
I'm curious, all you guys in this room here are just bashing Greeny. I get that Greeny sounds a little arrogant on air, but he carried that show completely. For the last 3 years, Golick mailed the damn thing in with Greeny, which is why he left. And I'll tell you personally, because I've interviewed both of them, Golick's an asshole. Flat out. He's a jerk. He's mean. He was not nice to either of us anytime we had him on. Greeny was terrific every time we had him on. Personable, cordial, actually almost seemed thankful for doing an interview with you, where you were wasting Golick's time. Make no mistake. And he was as bad as any national host I've ever dealt with.
The only time Golick was good to us, we, unbeknownst to him, arranged to have Greeny on at the same time. Okay, and we did an interview with the both of them, and neither one of them knew that the other was going to be on. Okay, and he perked up because of it. But yeah, Golick actually was difficult to deal with.
Jerk.
Period. I will say, though, I think his co-host has nailed it in more than he has here in the last.
Oh, that's possible, but I'm just telling you, he carried that radio show for 3 years. Carried it.
Hello.
Rob, good morning. How are you?
Hey, guys. What's going on?
Oh, March 105th or whatever it is.
110th. March 110th.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. Groundhog Day, baby.
It just really is.
Yeah, it's brutal.
But what else are you going to do, right?
Well, yeah, I guess we'll look back at this and it'll grow character on us all, right? Or whatever they say. Who knows?
Do something.
But, yeah, I hope.
Do something.
Yep.
Other than I'm happy, I get to spend a lot of time with my little girl. So, I've been full-time Mr. Mom right when the show ends every morning. So that's fun.
Yeah, that's one of the things, that's unbelievably great. At least there's something you can take away from it.
Yep.
The time that you're able to spend. So that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Officially, by the way, March 130th, but then you subtract from when the sports world shut down.
I got you.
Here we go, Rob. Thanks again.
Okay.
You know what? I'll try to bring you back some fish.
And Moulton.
Okay. You drop it off at the front door.
Probably in the mailbox. We'll pack ice.
Broadcasting live from the Kobe Cooling Remote Studios, where it's always cool and comfortable.
Oh, I like
It's up to you now. It's up to you.
I like it.
Now, the best local sports show this town has ever heard. Here's Miller and Moulton.
You're live.
Third and final hour of Miller and Moulton on this hump day. Thanks so much for being with us. Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio. The show streaming once again at millerandmoulton.com and broadcasting live once again on the Miller and Moulton YouTube and twitch.tv channel. Seth Everett will join us in about 25 minutes time. It's a pleasure to head to Philadelphia and talk once again with Rob Ellis of 94 WIP. Also, CBS Sports Radio. You can follow Rob on Twitter at @REllisSports, Ellis Sports. Rob, hope you and the family are holding up okay on this March 130th. How are you?
I'm good, boys. It's been too long, man. How you guys doing?
Well, we're doing pretty well, actually, all things considered. Rob, the Deshaun Jackson posts from yesterday, there's a part of me that's a little surprised he's still with the team. Are you?
First off, you guys remember when sports were fun? Remember those days? You remember when it wasn't, someone, Instagramming Hitler and Farrakhan, and it wasn't, arguing about money with billionaires and trillionaires and all those fun days. Yeah, it was. I remember those days longingly. Am I surprised he's still an Eagle? No, I'm not. Actually, I'm not surprised he's still an Eagle. In this sense, it's a very unique situation that they're in because you have a Jewish owner, a Jewish GM, and other members of the front office who are Jewish. Obviously, they take this very seriously, what Deshaun Jackson, put out there. But, there was a situation in 2017 when Riley Cooper used the N-word very publicly at a concert, in fact. And Riley Cooper was given a second chance. Knowing that precedent, and I'm not saying, there's a direct line there, but I'm saying there is a precedent there where a second chance was given. My best guess, guys, is they look at this and they feel like, and again, I wasn't in the conversations, but my guess is they feel like he made a mistake. He isn't an anti-Semite at heart. And if that's the case, I think they may be willing to give him a second chance. But let me tell you something. This thing's fluid. It's not a done deal. I think if there's anything else uncovered or unearthed that he did along these lines, he won't be a Philadelphia Eagle. If they don't believe that he's going to walk the walk and sort of do a Michael Vick where you're given a chance and you go out and make the most of it by trying to educate yourself and then educate people about these issues, then he won't be an Eagle. I don't think this thing's done. My guess is He will be an Eagle unless there is something else that comes up at this point. But that's kind of where things are. I think Jeffrey Lurie is a believer in second chances and has been dating back to his, whether it's Riley Cooper or Michael Vick, and Andy Reid was a big believer in that, and he still carries some influence in the organization. But I'm not shocked by it. But what Deshaun Jackson did is a flat out disgrace.
There's no doubt there. And I guess, even you go back to Riley Cooper, and it's tough to hear what Cooper did and then go, yeah, he just turned around the next day and figured it out. The same thing with Jackson. When you start quoting Hitler, it's a tough one to walk back, isn't it, Rob?
Yeah, it is. It is. And this is not, hey, everything's forgiven, go out there and catch footballs. There are a lot of people, and I did 4 hours on this last night, guys. There are a lot of people that are just flat out outraged and will never forgive Deshaun Jackson. And there are going to be issues if he's still an Eagle. But my guess is, look, I think they view this in a couple of different ways. I think they view it as they know the guy, pretty well. And it sounds like at first he didn't get it because the first apology was a little, I don't know, left people unsatisfied, if you will. Then he felt the need to back it up. I don't know if whether his agent said that to him or whether he realized it himself and the organization, leaned on him a little bit. I don't know. The other part of this thing is, let me give you one more little component of this. It's interesting. The NFL sort of left it in the Eagles' hands to discipline him, which I think, that also comes into play here. My guess is that he's going to be back. There's also practical reasons for this, whether it's a salary cap hit, whether it's the need for a veteran receiver when they don't have one. I think everything comes into the mix. But you're right, guys. When you're talking about Hitler quotes, even though they weren't actually from Hitler, but purporting something that Hitler, put out there, or Louis Farrakhan, you're crossing over into some real dangerous territory. And here's the thing. You can't plead ignorance on this. He's not a 14-year-old. He's 33. You need to know what those names mean. In particular, look, both. I'm not going to even lighten Louis Farrakhan, but you hear the word Hitler and you think it's a good idea in any way to put something out there from him. You really got to think long and hard about what exactly you're dealing with here. And that's the part to me that I have a real hard time getting past is, that he thought that this in any way, shape, or form was going to uplift, as he said, trying to uplift his people. It's amazing to me that in this day and age that these guys don't think before they hit send. It's really remarkable.
He's Rob Ellis, 94 WIP in Philadelphia. You can follow Rob on Twitter, REllis Sports, Ellis Sports. I believe I read last night that the Philadelphia's Anti-Defamation League has already spoken to Deshaun. They felt they had a good conversation. They'd like to work with him going forward, and that they said something publicly to the effect of, hey, listen, we think this guy can be rehabilitated. We think there's a good person in there somewhere. He did a really stupid thing. I want to go back to the Riley Cooper. Did he get disciplined by the Eagles at all? Was he suspended for a game or two? Was there any punishment that came from the team, or did they basically just say time will heal all wounds and let training camp and the season happen?
Well, it was not handled well. So what they did was they sent him away for a couple of days. You guys know he's from the Clearwater area. So they sent him back to Florida for a couple of days, which it was really a sort of a token symbol of something. And he was literally back within a week. And a lot of people were up in arms about that. Here's what really saved Riley Cooper in a couple of ways. You had guys on the team, guys like Jason Avant, even Michael Vick, who went to bat for him and said, look, give him a second chance. The problem that you had with the Riley Coopers, and he actually played pretty well for them, not that even matters in the scope of what we're talking about, but when he came back, he played decently to the point where they gave him an extension the next year. But we didn't see in the city him out there, on the ground doing anything after this happened. Like there, with Michael Vick at least, and that was unbelievably controversial when the Eagles signed him. But Michael Vick was in the schools. Michael Vick was meeting in the under developed parts of the city and talking to kids and educating them on dogfighting. I never saw Riley Cooper do one thing. Now, I can't say for a fact that he didn't end up going to some school and speaking to somebody, but it was very low profile and under the radar. And that bothered a lot of folks, and that stuck with a lot of folks. So if Deshaun is given this second chance, and you're right, I saw that there was the founder or the director of the National Jewish Museum, on the Holocaust Museum, excuse me, said that he had spoken with Deshaun and he invited Deshaun there to sort of have a little history lesson, and Deshaun accepted. Like those kind of things are important to show, that it's more than just words that you're speaking here, that you're willing to take the actions to educate yourself on what this is all about. That's really what this is going to come down to if he gets a second chance. If he does do that kind of stuff, I'm not saying all is going to be forgiven from people, but at least there'll be an understanding that, okay, this guy screwed up and he gets that he screwed up. Right now, I think people are sort of in limbo. Like, is he just saying this because he got caught, or does he really mean it? And that's the thing we don't know. And that's where, the Eagles in their statement, guys, they basically said this thing, we'll see. Why? I don't know that it's a lock. I'm telling you, I think right now they're just trying to flip every stone and see if there's anything else along these lines. If there is, that could be it for him. If there isn't, then I think he'll be back.
Rob, this is a pretty big reach, so I'll even start there. And by no means am I condoning anything that Deshaun Jackson said. Mm-hmm. But there's 32 teams in the league. And since Roger Goodell the players made their Black Lives Matter statement, the commissioner made his Black Lives Matter statement, not one owner has yet. Is there anything coming in Philadelphia at the ownership group of not sticking up for Black Lives Matter? Because really no ownership group has come out and said anything. And I'm not really trying to bridge the two, but I am bringing up the one because after Goodell's comments, we've not heard from many NFL owners. In fact, it's the first time NFL teams had to comment on something, and it's about something one of their players said. So have the Eagles made any comments on other matters, social justice-wise? Because we really haven't seen those either.
I know, I can't say for sure, but I know Jeffrey Lurie has been a very, very outspoken advocate in terms of social, issues. He has always been in the forefront. And this is long before, BLM and long before George Floyd and long before, the civil unrest that we've had, the last, however many months. So he's always been pretty outspoken. I can't say for sure if he put a release out, immediately or anything like that. I do think I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, there were a lot of Eagles players, including Carson Wentz, who put out statements. I think the organization did, but I can't say for sure, guys, on that one. I'm not 100% sure.
Rob, it really does sound to me like if the Riley Cooper incident had not happened with this very franchise a handful of years ago, that he'd be gone. But that if you're the Eagles, you will look like complete and utter hypocrites. Now, you could, the old, hey, two wrongs don't make a right. You could, if you're the Eagles, fall on the sword here and just say, you know what, upon further review, we screwed up 4 or 5 years ago. We messed up. We should have got rid of him. All right. We should have. That was a mistake. That was reprehensible. And we should have got rid of him. And we didn't. And we're not going to make that same mistake a second time. They could, and you could still call them hypocrites, but it really does sound like if not for Riley Cooper, Deshaun Jackson would be an ex-Eagle.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing you have to take into account, and this is very real, even though that was 7 years ago, which in some ways, seems like yesterday, in other ways with what we've been going through, it feels like it was, 100 years ago. But things are much different now. The political landscape is a lot different in our country right now. And there's a lot of heightened, and correctly so, a lot of heightened sensitivities now, and a lot of things that were maybe willing to get a free pass or a second chance back in 2013 that aren't going to get a second chance now. But you're right. I mean, the optics of this, if the African-American guy doesn't get a second chance and the white guy did, is not great.
On the understatement scale of 1 to 10, where would you rank that?
14.
Yeah.
I'm jumping right on Rob there. I'm jumping right ahead of him. All right, hey, more going on than the Eagles. We've actually talked a lot of NBA today, which is not something we normally do on this show. It's 10 years since the decision. First off, I'm going to ask you our poll question. LeBron made the decision. The players at that moment have had the power ever since. Is the league better today because of that, in your opinion?
No, I don't think it is. I don't think the super teams have made the league better. I don't think that the way the game is played, I'm going to sound like Gran Torino guy, but I don't think, strictly threes and dunks, which it's almost turned into, sort of like baseball where it's all or nothing with strikeouts and walks. I don't think it's better in that sense. I don't like. Look, I understand when it comes to this situation in the bubble, if guys have pre-existing issues, they have children on the way. This I get. Hey, if you want to opt out, you don't feel safe. I don't take any umbrage with guys who feel that way. It's nice to have that option where I know you guys and I have to go to work. That's certainly a different ball game, but they've accumulated enough money where they have choices. That's fine. That's all well and good. But no, I don't think that the players having this much power is a good thing. Now, the owners abused it for years, so they're getting their comeuppance. So that's a lot of what this is. But I don't think the league is necessarily better since the decision. No.
Rob, how important are these next 12 weeks for the Sixers? I mean, do you think this is the last chance that this young core group has together and they get broken up after this?
Well, I think I think it's critical for Brett Brown that this team gets at least to an Eastern Conference Finals. If they don't get to an Eastern Conference Finals, even in this goofy whatever this thing is going to be, I think he's in trouble because that'll be 3 straight years where they're not able to accomplish that. The other thing, it's going to reflect very poorly on really everybody involved. I mean, Elton Brand is the GM who became the GM by default in a lot of ways because they went through that awful situation with Brian Colangelo, and basically every front office member was in place when they went on the GM search, and no GMs wanted this job because they want to bring in their own people. What a novel concept. But the Sixers, ownership has not done a good job here. And I'll tell you the other thing that's going to happen. It won't be Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid that'll be, shown the exit. They're going to have to figure out a way to trade Al Horford, a way to trade Tobias Harris, but good luck. Horford's old with a monster deal, and Harris, as you guys know from his days in Orlando, he's a good player, but he's not a borderline max player. They just, at least right now, and we'll see if it looks different once they start playing again, but they didn't appear to have the right parts together to play with Embiid and Simmons. You got to surround Simmons with shooters, and Horford and Embiid were just a bad fit from the jump. So it is critical for them, as weird as this is going to be here, because they're the ultimate Jekyll and Hyde team, guys. They were 29-2 at home, and they were as bad as any good team on the road. Now you don't have the home court advantage, but you also don't have the road disadvantage. So what does that mean when you're playing in a neutral site for them? I have no idea. I have no idea how they're going to respond from an energy level. I have no idea how they're going to respond when another team goes on a run. And you don't have either that home crowd or the road crowd getting on you. To me, they're the biggest mystery team going into this thing.
And I wish like hell they had a Redick or somebody when the run was going the other way could knock down that three, as you mentioned earlier. I mean, that was the one guy I thought they should have kept because they've lacked shooting, as you pointed out, Rob. And when those runs happen, it's tough to get back in if you don't have guys that can make the three ball.
Yeah, they made a critical error. And, look, J.J. Redick's limited defensively, but J.J. Redick brought something that they don't have. And they never properly replaced him. They hoped Al Horford was going to be able to stretch out and knock down threes. He hasn't been able to do it. And they have some guys who are scorers. Like Tobias Harris is a scorer. He's not a shooter. And you need in that league, as you guys well know, you need someone who's going to knock shots down. And that's not there. Redick and Embiid worked very well together on that pick and roll, and they missed that element in a big way.
Rob, can Zach Wheeler, his first year in Philadelphia, sit out this season because of the coronavirus? I mean, Philly is a toughness sports town. They love their gritty, tough players. And whether it's fair or not, you come in, you sign a $23 million a year free agency deal. Philly desperately needs starting pitching. All right, they've got a real shot, especially in a shortened season, to make some noise. And Zach Wheeler is still thinking about, well, my wife's pregnant. I don't know if I want to go through with this. Can he get away in Philadelphia? His first impression sitting this season out.
Yeah, it wouldn't sit well with some. I will tell you what he needs to do more than anything else. Look, he's there. Okay, I give him credit. He's shown up. He's putting his work in, but he's also kind of giving you, I don't know, I'm not really sure. Well, you need to make a call. If you're going to be out, and I mean out for the season, then go right now so they know it. Don't do this waiting till maybe the last minute and then you're going to roll. I think that would be a big mistake for Zach Wheeler in this town in terms of the public perception. But look, the reality of this thing is, guys, whether it's wife pregnant, whether it's testing positive for COVID. I mean, you look at Freddie Freeman's situation, with the Phillies are dealing with this with a guy like Scott Kingery. At one point, it was very strange for them. They had a situation where Aaron Nola, Adam Hazley, Scott Kingery, and Hector Neris were all not in camp yet. That's your ace, that's your starting second baseman, that's your starting center fielder, and that's your closer. Now, a couple of those guys are back in at this point, and there was a weird false test. I mean, the whole thing, baseball's got to get its act together. But yeah, it won't sit well with some. I would agree with that. I mean, look, I think about my own situation. If my wife was pregnant, I'm not missing that. That's for sure. So I try to take a step out of myself for a minute. But yeah, there will definitely be some that come down on them hard.
Leaving 1 and 5 out of the equation, is there a better cheesy moment in a Rocky pitcher than when he catches the chicken?
Oh my God. And that's classic Mickey too.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. Mickey's the best. He says to him at one point, you going to stay in that stinking sweatshirt? It brings me luck. And he says, it brings flies. Mickey was the best. Burgess Meredith was the best. Anyway, is there a cheesier moment? God almighty.
Well,
there's a lot.
Can I nominate one? My wife's favorite cheesy moment is Rocky 2 when she wakes up from the coma and Sly comes in and she whispers, win. And Mickey goes, what are we waiting for?
Yeah, take this. And he hands the champagne to Paulie, and then it's on, the montage scene. I like also in that when they bring the baby out at first, Mickey looks at it and says, is that it? He makes his face like... is there a cheat? I'll tell you, I'll give you a pretty good one. How about Rocky Balboa when his son is mad at him because he's going to take the exhibition with Mason Dixon, and he talks about how he's always in his shadow. Go YouTube that speech. I think it's a pretty good speech, actually. People make fun of it, but it's pretty good where he talks about the world ain't always, sunshine and rainbows. It's going to knock you down, but it's how you respond. It's about you getting up and taking those shots and still getting up. That's a pretty good one, too.
Solid, Rob. And thank you so much for joining us, because without looking at your Twitter account this morning, I would have not been able to see these wonderful photos of Howard Eskin's beard, because that is a thing of damn beauty. And if my vote's in, keep that damn thing on your face. It is awful, and I love it.
Amen. He looks like some kind of cross between Forrest Gump and like a junkyard dog, man. I love what's going on there. He's got to roll that thing out.
And a little bit of a skinny Jerry Garcia there too.
Yes. He just needs that. He's got the headband on in the picture, but if he just has like the bandana, go old school Jerry, man, with the glasses, it would be perfect.
Rob, listen, because Howard's been around a while. That beard was on the edge in the late 80s when he was still on Channel 29. I mean, he's been on the edge with that thing long before the coronavirus.
Oh, I give him that, man. And the other thing is, everybody's got a beard now. He was rocking the beard, in the 70s and 80s. He was a trendsetter with the beard. There's no denying that.
He could have been a part of those 70s Phillies teams.
Exactly right. Correct.
Rob, all the best to you and the family. Thanks for being such a good sport, and hopefully we'll talk again before football season.
All right, guys. Always fun. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Rob Ellis from 94 WIP in Philadelphia. You can follow Rob on Twitter, @REllisSports, @REllisSports.
Did you see the beard?
Oh, yeah. See, I love Howard.
Well, we've had him on the show. Yeah, we've been lucky enough to have him on a handful of times. He's great. He is a one of a kind. He is truly a sports icon in Philadelphia, and there are not many of those that are left. He is one of the greats, because sometimes he takes himself too seriously, and most of the time he doesn't give two blanks. But he's great at what he does, and he looks like Forrest Gump right now. There's just no two ways about it.
He was the first non-TV guy in Philadelphia to become a big deal on television. Like, he was a radio, and he did a little bit of writing, and he was so good. The other thing is, he was the only guy Mike Schmidt really liked. Schmidt would always talk to Howard. Well, that was kind of a big deal in the late 70s, early 80s in Philadelphia. Mike Schmidt was kind of a big deal. Rob Ellis, kind enough to join us here on Miller and Moulton. Seth Everett, he's a big deal with us. All right, and with the occasional podcast guest also, because you get some good ones. Seth will join us next. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is about 25 minutes away here on Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio.
We do this all for you.
You are correct.
So sit back and enjoy.
It's fun. It's the best.
Enjoy the banter.
Fox and Sports, that's the game.
Enjoy the conversation that makes you think.
I would not think about ripping him.
What are you talking about?
Enjoy all of this.
Love it. Embrace it.
Isn't it great? And let's not forget.
Because we're doing it all for you.
You just watch. We're going to do it. And do it often.
We're Fox Sports Radio.
When I see
All right.
something beautiful, I want
American
to
League pennant odds.
A photo really is worth more than a
The
thousand
Red
words.
Sox are
That
plus
photo
2,000.
isn't very good if it's not in focus.
Mrs. Buck loves photography.
The Yankees are plus 170.
Photography is just a hobby. It's something
And the
I
Red
really
Sox
care
are
about,
plus
and it's good to know that
2,000.
Dr. Liss cared about me just as much.
We
Wow.
really don't want bad vision to keep people from doing the things they love.
Community Eye Center really does have the most caring doctors in sight.
Hi, this is Dr. Scheibel from Community Eye Center. My partner, Dr. Spatafora, and I want to remind everybody, don't
All right,
be a
I got to go
spreader.
back to this. I got to see if I
So
can.
tiny, 100 million particles fit on the head of a pin. As we run around in our trucks and cars and play golf and go fishing and go to work and do the things we like to do, we are spreading the virus. The virus can only move with us. Over 65, diabetes, COPD, all these folks will be hurt severely by this virus. Wash your hands, be careful, don't be a spreader.
Great news,
Tony's
Florida.
in the
Summer
forum.
clearance event.
Never even
Going on
heard
now
of Tony's in the
at
forum.
Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Lowest prices ever on over 1,500 new and certified
Okay,
pre-owned
Tony's
vehicles.
New York
Loaded,
Pizza.
luxurious
I see
Grand
what we're
Cherokee
at
Limited
here.
lease, $289 per month. That's right. Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited, $289 per month. 7-passenger Dodge Journey SUV, just $19,990. Plus at Galliana Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, you can drive payment-free for 3 months or interest-free for 6 years and worry-free up to 100,000 miles. And our parts service and body shop are open to serve you. Summer clearance event at Galliana Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, 1/2 mile south of Daniels Parkway on US 41 in Fort Myers. Open every day, including Sunday. Call 239-481-2600. GallianaCars.com. 42-month lease, 10,000 miles per year, $19.99 due at signing, plus tax, tag title, dealer and acquisition fee, 0 security deposit, $13.88 per month per thousand borrowed for 72 months at 0 APR with 0 down with under approval offers no combined.
It's Kaylee Kobe with your Kobe cooling tip of the day. It's
Bob is such a good guest.
Yes, he is. Now I don't know what. I got to make sure. I think I have Seth's numbers backwards in my phone.
Conditioners clean twice a year by Nate certified mechanics, like my dad. All the mechanics at Kobe Cooling are Nate certified.
Good morning.
Hi.
You deserve the best. If
How are you?
How's it going?
Good, you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
And call 239
Are we calling you on the right number?
Yeah.
All right. I just thought I had your numbers backwards in my phone.
Oh, no worries. How you been?
I've been good. I've been good. You?
I haven't done mornings the last 2 mornings, so it's been great.
Oh, good.
I switched. I did afternoon, so it's been bliss.
I was okay with Pino's Johnny Mac until they ruined one of my pizzas and the owner took no responsibility for it. I've never been back. Having a pizza discussion in the Twitch chat room, Seth.
I was going to say, that is one of the most interesting responses I've ever gotten.
When people text in there, I like to respond.
I know. I appreciate it as a Twitch person.
And now we have to turn the commercials down and we have to talk during the commercial breaks. I don't know if you saw the memo.
Yes, no static commercials. Yes,
Right.
I did.
Right. So I turn them down.
Yeah.
I turn them down and talk about pizza.
We have a totally different thing because now we have a static image, and I have to make animated like best of for breaks so that we can get guests on.
Gotcha.
And
at some point, I'm going to need to talk to you, Seth, in between our two shows about how to do some of that stuff. I have enough knowledge.
My new computer is supposedly coming on the 16th, and that's what I need because I can't do all the things Collins wants me to do with my current computer.
All right, here we go.
"28 minutes past the hour. Thanks for being with us. Miller and Moulton, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio, streaming at millerandmoulton.com, broadcasting live on the Miller and Moulton YouTube and Twitch.tv channels. They're interactive. They're free. Sign up for them. You'll enjoy the experience. He's Seth Everett. He's our friend, and he's got the two great podcasts, Sports with Friends and Hall of Justice. And he's on a variety of radio stations throughout the country. And he's also got his own Twitch TV show, middays. Seth, how are you?
Good morning, guys. How are you? And, the podcasts this week are fun, and fun.
Really?
Oh, they're good.
Sound like a Beach Boys.
Well, I'll tell you the sports one after, because that'll segue into what you guys want to have me on for. But Roz Doyle from Frasier is my guest on the Hall of Justice.
Underrated show, by the way.
Perry Gilpin. First of all, I love Frasier, and I love Perry Gilpin, and she was so cool.
Great.
And what was the get? Where did the get come from? Why?
She is in a new web series, and she's actually nominated for an Emmy Award called Old Guy, about this guy who started acting at like 80. And the problem is when you're 80 years old and you're an actor, the only roles you're getting are Dead Guy and Incontinent Man and all those things. So they made this short little web series, and Perry Gilpin plays his agent, and it's really cute. It's really short. There's 6 4-minute episodes. Watch the whole thing in half an hour.
You can follow Seth on Twitter as well at Seth_Everett. Well, okay. All right. You can actually see baseball workouts happening. They're back.
Yeah, have you enjoyed that? Yeah, that's been pretty good.
It's not bad. I did enjoy yesterday. I don't know how many people saw this. So apparently one of the rules now is, first off, Mark, we've talked about all the changes to baseball this year. Well, you can't throw the ball around the diamond either. I mean, after a strikeout, you can't throw it down to third and work it around. And then after a ground out, the first baseman can't work it back around. And, it's just get it to the pitcher. Or are they putting a new ball in play after every at-bat? Because Garrett Cole,
are they collecting all the balls that get hit into the stands?
Right, because like Garrett Cole at one point yesterday in the workout, he got a baseball, and you know how pitchers are. Sometimes they like the feel of a certain ball, and they don't like the feel of another one. And that they don't like the feel, they just throw it back, and the home plate umpire always obliges. Well, Cole is complaining, hey, I don't like the ball. And the Yankees are basically saying, I don't know what to tell you. You got to pitch with that ball. And the next pitch he throws, the guy hits it out of the park. And Cole's looking around going, man, 300-something million used to get you your own baseball. I can't even get one now.
Yeah, well, Garrett Cole has got to call his pal Jake Dykman and find out what a real concern is. not that. Because Jake Dykman, who has ulcerative colitis, says, what is going on with these testing programs, and how did you not have this ready in time? And Adam Silver made a great comment because, he's worried about the bubble. Baseball doesn't have the bubble, and you can't take the field if you don't know the results. And 6 teams, it's egregious. And I don't understand one thing about the holiday, because this was brought up to me by in Sports with Friends. I had this big debate with Marcus Hayes from the Philadelphia Inquirer. How is there a holiday weekend in a pandemic? If you're paying what I would think is top dollar to get these test results, how do you not have them? And I didn't understand that. And I don't understand the debates going on, because I think what Mike Trout said and Zach Wheeler said were very, very eloquent, very, very smart, and I would expect more players. And a couple of weeks ago, I said to you guys, I think it's going to be in the 30 range, and I still think so.
Yeah, I got a kick out of, Mike Rizzo basically, I don't know.
Lambasted Manfred.
Well, but is there anything that he said that's out of bounds? I mean, I read through it 6 times, and I'm going, he spoke what appears to be the truth. He's on the front line of this, the GM, and Manfred says he's insubordinate? I mean, Rob.
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. And that shows you how out of touch and tone deaf Manfred is. My argument for the Nationals was a little different. Not only did they not get test results, they don't have N95 masks. Well, they do now. But Monday they didn't. And again, if I hear one more person say, well, it was a holiday. Oh, it was a holiday, huh? Did you tell the coronavirus that it was a holiday? Did we make sure that the coronavirus knows that it's a holiday and that we should really just take the day off? Because that's absurd. And, there's high stakes here. We're trying to pull off this season, and you're trying to do it very, very different. I did some research over the weekend comparing the protocol books between Bundesliga and baseball. This was my summer reading. And Bundesliga has 50 pages of advice for players when they leave the stadium. Not one word in the protocol book for baseball. And now they're starting to schedule these exhibition games, which is great for the Phillies and the Mets and the Yankees. But what are the Rockies doing? And what are the Diamondbacks doing? These are flights, and they have to go and travel and travel and travel and travel. And I think the media is not paying attention to that.
For those that don't know, obviously the 4th of July on Saturday, and Major League Baseball had this testing program in which their tests were supposed to be given and then overnight results. Well, the results weren't there on Saturday, and in some places they weren't even there on Sunday after tests were given on Friday. And Major League teams were like, hey, what's going on? And in the Nationals case, I think they even showed up Monday morning and they still hadn't had tests. And so Mike Rizzo, the GM, canceled the workout and lambasted Major League Baseball and their testing procedures and protocols and said, hey, you got to get your you-know-what together here. This is a big deal. I don't know how we're going to go about and do this if we can't get overnight results with our tests. And instead of Rob Manfred going, hey, sorry, you're right, Rob Manfred yelled at Mike Rizzo, the GM, for going public and making baseball look bad. But I got to believe, Seth, that this is one of those instances in which Lerner, the owner, of the Nats, that the Lerner family will say to Mike Rizzo, we got your back, especially since you just won us a World Series. You say whatever you want, and we'll deal with Rob Manfred.
No, and why does Manfred single out Rizzo? It's because Rizzo doesn't have a players' union. Jake Dykman, I thought, said it very, very well. Jake Dykman, like I said, has a pre-existing condition. And the reason I saw that and it registered with me is what he was trying to say is, I am trying here. What Jake Dykman was saying is, I want to do this. I want to play. He's not one of these panickers who is just saying, I want out immediately. Jake Dykman's a young kid, and he's literally saying, I am trying here. I'm scared to death, and you're fueling my fear. And I'm paraphrasing Jake Dykman there, but he was so on point in what he was saying, and I couldn't believe it. And, my takeaway from the workouts, you said you love watching the workouts. I love the pictures of the reporters sitting completely by themselves, wearing masks, going on Zoom chats to talk to players. And, I'm wrestling with whether or not I should go to a ballpark. I'm definitely not going until the regular season starts. But I can't imagine going to a ballpark and then getting on a Zoom. I don't see the value in being there. I'm sorry. I don't see that. And I've wrestled with some reporters recently because I'm asking them, what are you doing at the ballpark that has great value? I can log on to the same Zooms. I don't understand. And I don't understand why the media is going to be there. Is it literally just for their Instagram clicks? That's weak.
Well, but their bosses want them to get their Instagram clicks too, Seth. Now, let me ask you, if you were at the ballpark during batting practice, would you not do the Zoom and stand up like in row 8 and just start randomly yelling questions? Because I think that would be more fun.
Would you get a new ball? The what? A new ball. Would you get a new ball, Garrett Cole? No, that would be awesome.
And I mean, and look, I'm fine with some of the mask shaming that's going on. I think people blowing up over not wearing a mask is idiotic. But I
don't know how it's political.
I'm not getting into that. But Seth, what I think would be funny, and I shouldn't even have done that, but I mean, just in baseball, I mean, who's going to be the guy reporting on whether the right fielder spits at some point? I mean, the hilarity of what's going to happen. Hey! I just saw it. Aaron Judge spat. He's out. I mean, it's going to be comic relief, Seth.
Well, and then I heard from a couple of people in the broadcast industry, because they're talking about how active is the sound system going to be, because that's going to sound cavernous in some of these places. If they're playing walk-up music for every hitter, at least on the home team, and then the organ guy is going to be there, they're playing the organ, it's going to sound really weird, but I'm interested in that because of the limits. For people don't understand, and people in the media don't understand just how much demand there is to go to these games. There's a limit of 35 people in the media for every MLB event. So for any game, if the Orioles are playing the Red Sox, 35 people can go from the media, and you have to reserve it online. And they're all getting locked up, like they're reserving. People are trying to pick out games for like August because it's hard to get a slot. If you think about it, in some of these big markets like LA and New York, these media members, there's 75 media people that go to every game in normal times. So to cut that by half is tough. But again, I ask, what is essential? Because I don't have a justification to go. What I usually do when I go to ballparks is I talk to people, I talk to players. You can't do that. I usually talk to players off the record. I do more conversations that I don't record than the ones I do, and then I try to get a couple of podcasts. And I'm not going to do that because you can't have access to any of those things, and that's kind of awkward.
If Mike Trout opts out, and for those that don't know, the best player in the game, he and his wife are expecting their first child here in a handful of weeks, and he's torn. And as you said, he was pretty eloquent in how torn he is over this. But then there's the competitor in him, and not just the money he'll miss out on. But, hey, during this short season, a team like the Angels could really benefit. Most people believe over 162 games they wouldn't have a chance to make the playoffs. But in a 60-gamer, they could. Sure. Now, if Trout opts out, though, do you think people will understand, or do you think people will hold it against him?
Well, I think it's going to be fractured like everything else. It's the mask argument. It's all of this. There are people who have complete respect for what COVID-19 has done to our society, and there are people who just hate it. I'm sure there are people in your chat room right now that hate everything I'm saying, and there are people who love it. That's how fractured this society is right now in this country. I tweeted something last night about what Canada is doing because Canada's unified. And that's why I thought Gary Bettman made a nice little statement without having to open his mouth with the leak that Toronto and Edmonton are going to be the two bubbles. Not Las Vegas, and it's because of what's gone on in America. And because of that, you're starting to see a lot of what Mike Trout said and how dangerous it is. I think a lot of players are feeling, and they don't want to say it. And Zach Wheeler can say it because he's, pinning off of what he had said back in April, where he said, I'm not sure I even want to do this thing. My thought is that there are three guys like Mike Trout on every team. And the question is whether or not they will say something. I think veterans who have lots of money, I think they're likely to opt out. And I like the free agency argument. I don't understand how Mookie Betts plays. Because he's risking. Sorry?
I'm totally with you. I mean, we've said this. We've laid it out. Why can you honestly risk $300 million over? Listen, I could forget the coronavirus. There's a part of me, if this was only a 60-game season, like there's a Washington player in the NBA who's not playing because he's like, listen, I'm reaching free agency here in 2 weeks, and I'm not going to risk my $50 million contract and blow my knee out in 8 meaningless games. I mean, there's a part
Earl
of
Thomas.
If Mookie Betts had sat out this season, forget the coronavirus. If he said, I'm 60 games away from $300 million, I'm not playing.
Right, and that goes back to my argument, which is I don't want these guys to be dishonest. I don't want to know Mike Trout's reasons. I don't want to know Bertan's reasons. I don't want to know the reasons. I just say it's COVID-19 too risky. That's it. I don't want to know your personal stories because that's where the judgments come. And that's what I got into an argument on my Sports with Friends podcast with Marcus Hayes of the Philadelphia Daily News and Philadelphia Inquirer, because what he wrote was that Zach Wheeler and Mike Trout, and he named them by names, he said that they owe it to their teammates and to the sport to play. And he tells this elaborate story on the podcast about how he was stuck in spring training during a snowstorm, and so he missed the birth of his child, and that his father missed the birth, his birth, because he was fighting in the Korean War. That's his argument. He's got a valid argument. I disagree adamantly, but he thinks that Mike Trout owes it to everybody to play. I completely disagree. And so when I saw that article in the Philadelphia Daily News yesterday, I texted him and I said, are you free this afternoon? And I canceled my plan for Sports with Friends, and that's out on iTunes right now.
All right, Seth. David did one thing here. I'm going to make you just put you on a baseball. Give me two teams. He mentioned the Angels, and I saw this before we had you on, that Boston's 20-1 for the pennant. Boston's never 20-1 to win the pennant. I mean, that to me is worth putting a couple of bucks on. Who are two teams that are not favorites that you go, hey, 60-game year, this pitching, this team, I think it would be smart money to take a bet on. I like Boston at 20-1 because you just don't ever get Boston at 20-1. Who do you like?
Well, last year, if you went through 60 games, the Seattle Mariners would have made the playoffs, and they lost 100 games. And they would have been in the playoffs if you mapped it after 60 games. They got out to a 13-2 start last year.
That's right.
And to me, if you get out to a 13-2 start and then play 500 ball, you're in. So a lot of people have told me San Diego is a team to watch. Tampa keeps getting talked about in terms of teams that are built for a short run here. But any team that has, to me, a frontline ace, if you have a frontline ace and your offense is okay, one team I hate to say that I think is built for this kind of mishmash is the Mets, because they have Cespedes, and Cespedes is a walking, house of cards. But if you have a universal DH and he can just DH and hit, he looks great. I saw a couple of workouts on saw it online because he looks incredible, and he's in a contract year, so I would expect big things from him. And Jacob deGrom. And one thing I've noticed about Clayton Kershaw and Jacob deGrom is they threw during this quarantine a lot. And so these guys are throwing 75, 80 pitches already, and we're only in day 3 of this summer camp. I think that's really interesting because a lot of guys took it upon themselves to do it. And this is what we're going to see in the NFL when training camp opens, is who did what during quarantine. And if you had access to, if Jacob deGrom had somebody to throw to, I don't know who he threw to, but if he had somebody to throw to, he was throwing this whole time. He probably has about 100 innings under his belt.
Susan Sarandon. That's who he was throwing to.
That'd be incredible.
Well played.
I throw to Perry Gilpin.
Well played by both of you. I'm going to throw a team out there, by the way, for a 60-game season. Texas Rangers. Just going to throw that out there. Could be a surprise. All right, Seth, Hall of Justice, Sports with Friends. I think you promoted both, but go.
Yeah. No. The thing with Marcus Hayes is he is not a person who is very down on COVID-19. Like, he takes it very seriously, but he is diametrically opposed to everything I think about this baseball plan. And I don't think that a player owes it to his team or owes it to his fans, not in a global pandemic. And that's it got pretty heated. It was a pretty good debate. And that's out on iTunes and Spotify and all those things now. And then Perry Gilpin, she is so incredible. And she's the voice of Volcana in Superman the Animated Series. So even that was a hook for me. So, Perry Gilpin this week on the Hall of Justice.
He's Seth Everett, Sports with Friends, Hall of Justice, and Seth_Everett. And don't forget, Seth, along with Eton Thomas, they do a show middays on Seth's
1 o'clock
Twitch TV channel. Seth, all the best to you and the family. We'll do it next week.
Sounds great, guys. Talk to you soon.
Seth Everett, kind enough to join us once again here on Miller and Moulton. The good, the bad, the ugly, as we wrap up this Hump Day edition. Thanks for being with us, Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio.
Welcome to the program.
This is the Dan Patrick Show.
College football world was shook over the weekend by reports of positive coronavirus tests throughout the nation. I think we look at college football and say, well, we got time here. We don't. I mentioned this late last week. The NFL looked like, oh, you got a lot of time here. You don't. You got football. You got a first game in August, which I don't see how it's played.
Dan Patrick. The Dan Patrick Show.
John Patrick, the weather guy at ABC7, just tweeted out a T-shirt that says, I'm silently correcting your grammar.
Yes.
And he tweeted out, I instantly thought of Jeff Butera.
Yeah. Saw that this morning.
Dan Martineau here, owner of DR Martineau Roofing of Southwest Florida. We're still finding a lot of roofs with hurricane and windstorm damage. Call us today for a free inspection. Google DRM Roofing or call 239-332-1441.
License number CCC 1326954.
For professional roofing, the name you need to know is DR Martineau.
Want to talk about Stadium Dry Cleaners, my good friends. They are great people there. I've been going to Stadium Dry Cleaners, I'm telling you, for as long as I can remember. And you may know Larry Rose. Now, Larry is an experienced SEC and NFL referee. Well, I know Larry has a fantastic dry cleaner and a great businessman. Look, you're going to love...
Remember my dad taking me to Larry the Dry Cleaner. What, the grand opening's on Saturday? I'm telling you.
Locations near Publix.
I wonder if I'm allowed, since they don't want commercials, if I just make fun of the commercials on Twitch. I mean, I love all of our support. I have nothing problem with this guy's a great guy. I just think Drew sounds like he's doing the Howard Stern ad and then finds out that it's a grand opening.
I'm telling you, I trust my family's dry cleaning to Larry and the team at Stadium Dry Cleaners. So will you visit them? Visit Stadium Dry Cleaners.
By the way, in Grimaldi's, you have to eat it there too, Juan. That's the biggest thing with pizza is that most pizzas do not travel. Like Doc's Pizza in Bonita Springs is a fine pizza. You want to go to the beach, watch sunset, and have a pizza? I cannot tell you how good Doc's is. You take Doc's 4 blocks down the road to your house, it turns into a bowl of mush, and I don't know how it happens. I used to live in Bonita on the beach, and you couldn't take a Doc's Pizza home, and it wouldn't be worth a crap. But inside Doc's, it's terrific. But it was too heavy of a pie to travel. Grimaldi's is another one. You leave, I don't think, Moulton, you live a mile and a half from Grimaldi's. I would venture to say that pizza would be half as good at your house as it would be in Grimaldi's.
Yes, 60%, I would say.
Yeah,
Yep.
And it's a great pizza.
And it's only because, literally, I live next to Bell Tower.
No, that's what I mean.
I can get it home, like you said. I can get it home in 3 minutes.
But that thin, like Tony Sacco's, I think, is a pretty good chain pie. Got to eat it there. Those thin pizzas you lose the snap, and that's everything.
Never mind with the Grimaldi's, it's thin, and that cheese, there's always the risk. If you can't have the pizza perfectly flat, it could just kind of slide on you.
I don't think, does Doc's serve them before 4? Don't you, right? I haven't been to Doc's. I can't tell you the last time I was at Doc's. It's been 5 years probably. About the last time I was at the beach. Because, well, I live in Florida, and you don't go to the beach if you live here.
For a couple of years, and recently I've lost 20 pounds because now I have the energy to work out from home, and that'll put you in a good mood too. C4MH.com.
What do you think we have more of? Better pizza places or better Italian restaurants?
Better breakfast restaurants?
No.
I would say Italian. I would say Italian because there's some really good high-end Italian in this town. And I got to get the name. Well, you don't do pasta anymore. There's a place by you, kind of off the back first off, Skinny Dogs blows skillets out of the water. And I like skillets.
Skillets or First Watch?
Skillets.
It's the worst thing that ever happened to anybody ever. Prepare yourself.
Mainly because of service.
Oh, the one by me, the service is incredible, First Watch. But okay.
You're live.
All right. For the good today, we go to Tennessee in a story right out of David's favorite movie, The Jerk. Rue's a 3-year-old Belgian, Malinois? I've never even heard of this dog. But regardless, Rue, the 3-year-old dog, woke up her owner with frantics and unusual barks on the 4th of July. When he opened the door, man ran out and saw his neighbor's house burning. He ran next door, banged on the door, was able to wake the family of 3 and their pets. No one was injured. And then the owner of the dog, Jeff LeKay, was able to use a garden hose on the flames until firefighters arrived. No word on whether they renamed the dog, David. Believe Lifesaver was one of the ideas, and I don't know if that's what they went with.
I hosed down a fire in between my house and the house next door once here during dry season. Kids were setting off fireworks in the street and caught the lawn on fire, and it was headed right for my house. And as I was just cursing the living you-know-what out of those kids, I was hosing down the fire. I kept it just in control enough until the fire company arrived. And I was cursing so much that my wife just came out and said, "Go in the house now."
For the bad, we go to Orlando when Miss Jackson had to pay $65 for her bag fee. Well, she didn't like it. That's what you get for taking Spirit Airlines. And she became angry over the fee. It became so bad that they told Miss Jackson she was not going to be allowed to fly. That's when she threw a bag of shoes at the agents at the service desk, punched another agent, and then made her way to a metal dustpan that was used for airport cleaning.
Wow.
And she went all dustpan on the supervisors. When police showed up, she told officers she had COVID-19 before coughing on the equipment and then trying to spat in the officer's face. $65 for a bag, and that's the problems we had. Finally, the ugly, David. We go to Germany, where a bachelor party went wrong. The local Red Cross said a 38-year-old man from Berlin was dared to touch a baby viper with his tongue on the floor of the Australian Alps.
Oh, give me a break.
He did. And the snake bit him on the tongue.
No!
Mountain rescuers and a doctor were called to the scene. He was taken to the hospital. The Red Cross said the partygoers may have confused the young snake with a worm.
Really? How much had they been partying beforehand?
I am hoping that the only snow around was Peruvian marching powder, if that's the case. And that, David, is the good, the bad, and the ugly. On today, July the 8th, and this the longest year in the history of Western civilization, 2020.
It was 10 years ago tonight that LeBron James made the decision. He took his talents to South Beach, and from that moment on, the players have had the power in free agency. Is the NBA better off now because of it? So far, pretty good response to our poll question, millerandmoulton.com, that Mark Miller on Twitter, the David Moulton on Twitter. 57% of you say no. NBA not better off with the players forming their own super teams. I contend the NBA was much better off LeBron's 4 years in Miami. But the league as a whole right now, I'm with the majority. I say no.
The only reason I think the league is down right now is because all of the teams are in the Western Conference. The teams worth watching are out west. If it were flip-flopped, I think our answer would be different. And I don't think the league is really all that much different than it was 25, 30 years ago. It just seems that way to all of you.
That's a dadgum good point, Mark, that if we had one super team in the East, if you know what I mean, it would make all the difference, a.k.a. the Celtics or the Heat. Miller and Moulton, thanks so much for being with us. Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio.
Okay, you guys have a good day. See you tomorrow.
You too.
Sure,
and yes, did I say Australian? That's on me. You know, a lot going on there trying to get through a bad story in a hurry. And Heckle, you are totally on point with Goldie's. I've not done breakfast there, but I work down the road from there with the other job. Probably had lunch there twice a week. Goldie's amazing. Then you factor in the fact that it might be the most affordable restaurant in Southwest Florida. Totally with you. Totally with you. And Miller and Moulton fan, I hope you go to the Australian Alps and fall off. You MF or you.
Come on now.
Hey, funny's funny, but I got to be able to at least defend myself.
That's a good line.
I hope, you know what, I'm going to go to Austria and swim in the Great Barrier Reef, okay? How about that?
Although I'll bet you there is a mountain area in Australia in which they do refer to it as their Alps. It's kind of like when you're on the, what golf course is it locally? You're on the certain tee. It's like the highest point.
Oh, that's at
Southwest
Calusa
Florida.
Pines, yeah.
Yeah, what are you, like 900 feet above sea level or something like that?
Something pathetic.
Yeah. Or as we call it, a mountain.
Right. Well, the biggest mountain in Lee County is Mound Key, where it's the shells built up from the Calusa Indians. I mean, those are trash heaps and shells. That's how we make mountains. All right, people. I love the idea, Juan, of a Miller and Moulton pizza party. Social distance pizza party.
Wow.
That could be our first. But the problem is I wanted to have a pizza fest. Like how they have these taco fest and all that stuff. The problem is the ovens. None of these people would take their pizza out because of what we talked about during all the breaks, is that you lose quality when it leaves the restaurant. So I think we got to figure that you're on to something there. You're on to something, Juan. We got to figure this out. All right, everybody. Thanks for playing around. We'll do it again tomorrow.